Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. All of Alpine Lake Town was filled with the sound of firecrackers and fireworks. It was lively, noisy, and boisterous, so as to drive away the year beast, Nyan. Zheng Zhuxi seized the opportunity to pull Ding Songyan away from the heated chamber, out to the front courtyard, where she produced a wooden crate of firecrackers and fireworks from somewhere. "Go get an iron basin," Zheng Zhuxi instructed her junior brother. Both of them had exceptional hearing and were untroubled by the random crackle of firecrackers around them. He had come through Alpine Lake Town just that afternoon and seen how the children played, so he had a fair idea of what his senior sister had in mind. He procured an iron basin from one of the elderly servants he knew, placed some firewood inside, and used the stove to light it. In the biting wind, Zheng Zhuxi handed Ding Songyan a firecracker, and they both tossed their pieces into the fire basin at the same moment. The bamboo nodes caught fire and let off a continuous crackling and popping. Zheng Zhuxi crouched down, her fair, clean face lit crimson by the firelight. Using the basin, she kept lighting firecrackers and tossing them into the courtyard, sometimes one at a time, sometimes a whole string. Amid the pops of the blasts, Ding Songyan rolled up his sleeves and joined in. At first, the two of them went about it dutifully, driving off the imaginary year beast, but before long, Ding Songyan deliberately tossed a firecracker next to his senior sister. Zheng Zhuxi gritted her teeth and returned the favor. Gradually, the two of them started chasing each other around the fire basin, the pillars, and the trees, occasionally kicking the iron basin to send sparks flying through the air so they could light their firecrackers, or feinting with their shoulders and stamping false steps to deceive the other. One moved with the sinuous grace of a dragon in flight, the other as light as a startled swan, and amidst the unceasing explosions of the firecrackers, it was almost as if they were competing with hidden weapons. When the entire crate of firecrackers had been used up, both of them came to a stop at the same moment and looked at each other. Scattered sparks drifted slowly down from the air above. The sound of firecrackers in the distance had not yet ceased. Zheng Zhuxi caught her breath, then suddenly broke into a smile as bright as moonlight. "How can you be so awful? Couldn't you just set off firecrackers nicely? Why did you have to attack me?" she muttered in mock reproach, eyes curving with laughter. Ding Songyan laughed. "Before I learned martial arts, I had to set off firecrackers like a good boy, and now that I have, I'm still supposed to. Wouldn't that make the whole thing a waste?" Zheng Zhuxi gave a huff, then couldn't help laughing out loud. She nodded. "But it was quite fun." "You've never played like this before." Ding Songyan walked toward her. Zheng Zhuxi smiled as she thought back. "When I was in Alpine Lake Town, senior sister Zhu would often come find me on New Year's Eve, bringing along her cousins and relatives. We'd all play games together, stay up until dawn, and set off firecrackers just for the occasion. In Changhua, my cousins and I would set off firecrackers too, but none of us ever played as wildly as just now. For them, it was already one of the rare times in the year when they didn't have to observe proper decorum." "Why didn't senior sister Zhu come tonight?" Ding Songyan asked in passing. Only then did Zheng Zhuxi notice. She shook her head. "I'm not sure. Perhaps she found something else to do. Maybe senior sister Zhu thought it wouldn't be fun with me here." Ding Songyan took the blame on himself, to save his senior sister from feeling that spending the past half-year so close with her junior brother, absorbed in martial cultivation, had caused her to neglect her closest friend. "The main thing is that you don't like joining her wagers." Zheng Zhuxi noticed the sound of firecrackers from town had grown a little quieter, and said to Ding Songyan, "You'll be in the West Wing, I'll show you the way. The new clothes my mother prepared for you are there too." "We aren't staying up for the new year." Ding Songyan followed beside her. Zheng Zhuxi said with a smile, "We have to rise early tomorrow to pay respects at the founding ancestors' shrine. It only comes around once every 5 years." In Alpine Lake Town, dusk was the time for ancestor rites. The early morning was reserved for the Bright Night Sect's founding masters. Bright Night Sect's rites for the founding masters were divided into grand ceremonies and minor ones. The 20th day of March each year, the anniversary of the sect's re-establishment, called for a grand ceremony with the whole sect in attendance. The minor ceremony fell on the morning of the first day of each year, and normally required only bowing in the direction of the mountain gate from home. But every 5th year, it was more formal. Disciples were to go up the mountain to the founding master's shrine. There was no need for grand preparations. Going in a small group or alone were both fine. Before going to the West Wing, Zheng Zhuxi led Ding Songyan through the custom of seeing off the fortune god and the auspicious god, closing the residence's front gate. This was the custom in several northern provinces of Great Zhao. Even gods, if they lingered too long in a home, would become a nuisance. In the West Wing, Ding Songyan found the new clothes laid out on the bed, a festive set of red with black patterns, a proper upper garment and lower piece. After washing up and soaking his feet in the hot water a servant brought, he was tidying up to go to sleep when he suddenly heard familiar footsteps approaching. "Junior brother." Zheng Zhuxi knocked on the door and called out, her voice warm with laughter. "I'm about to sleep. What does senior sister want now?" Ding Songyan opened the door, unsure whether he felt a little apprehensive or a little eager. Zheng Zhuxi was holding 2 oil lamps, each enclosed in glass. "There's still one thing left to do." With light, quick steps she went to the bed, crouched down and slid the lit oil lamp beneath it. The space beneath glowed at once in a warm amber light. "What's this?" Ding Songyan asked, puzzled. Zheng Zhuxi stood up, eyes bright and smile radiant. "Illuminating Zhuhao. It's a New Year's Eve custom of the dynasty. Don't put it out yourself. Let it extinguish on its own." Zhuhao, or wasteful expenditure, referred to the malevolent ghost of folk legend that caused people to lose their wealth and drain their household resources. In some places, it referred instead to the mice that pilfered from the family stores and the depletion that followed. "Ah, I see." Ding Songyan let out a quiet breath. She picked up the remaining oil lamp and had taken only a few steps when she suddenly stopped. "Oh, I forgot to wish you a happy new year." She turned to him at once, smiling warmly, and cupped her hands. "A peaceful and joyful new year. May great fortune and prosperity come your way. And the same to you, senior sister. A peaceful and joyful new year. May great fortune and prosperity." Ding Songyan cupped his hands in return. After Zheng Zhuxi left, Ding Songyan closed the door and returned to the bed. He gazed for a moment at the warm glow seeping out from beneath the bed, then smiled and shook his head. Amid the continuous sound of firecrackers, Ding Songyan fell into a calm and easy sleep. The moment dawn broke, he was already up, dressed in the heavy padded new red clothes with black patterns, upper garment and lower piece. He had barely finished tidying himself when a knock came at the door. He opened the door, and Zheng Zhuxi's figure filled his eyes. She carried the autumn waiter sword in hand, dressed in a vermilion padded jacket with a ring of white fur at the cuffs. She wore a bright red cotton skirt below and a crimson greatcloak trimmed in white fur. Her hair was gathered in an upswept bun, and she had applied a touch of rouge in keeping with the occasion, which lent her already lovely features a touch of grandeur and complemented her somewhat bold brows perfectly. She was radiant like a fire, luminous and breathtaking. "A peaceful and joyful new year. May great fortune and prosperity come your way." Zheng Zhuxi flashed a dimple and said it again. In the main bedchamber, Tao Wenshu, changed back into the sect master's black robe, saw her husband standing at the desk by the window, writing with focused concentration, each stroke flowing and unhurried. She waited until he set down his brush before asking with a smile, rectifying the self and seeking sincerity. Zheng Ziming turned around and smiled. "At peace. Our family of 3 should face no calamities within the next half year." He had just used the act of writing to settle his mind and spirit, then actively exercised the way of utmost sincerity to seek for knowledge. "Look at you, always worrying over nothing," Tao Wenshu said, pressing her lips together into a smile. Hall of myriad stars, the purple forbidden chamber. Ding Songyan had spent 3 days eating and drinking freely at his master's home, keeping them company through the festivities, and had only just returned to the mountain gate when his master summoned him here. "Your senior sister has completed the first alien aperture for the White Tiger. Tomorrow she'll travel with me and my husband to Changhua Prefecture and Flame Capital, so she should be back on the mountain in about half a month," Tao Wenshu said with a smile. "During that time, your other senior brothers and sisters likely won't be at the mountain gate either. Holidays aren't common, so they probably won't return until after the Lantern Festival. But you can seek guidance from your Master Granduncle Wang or Master Uncle Yan. Heth, they likely have quite a few questions for you as well." Before the new year, Ding Songyan had spent 3 years worth of his lifespan to complete the Great Proliferation chapter of the Celestial Stars scripture, identified 9 errors in the corresponding aperture forging and viscera installation methods, and provided his thoughts and approaches for correcting them. By now, He had expended 16 or 17 years of his lifespan in total. Fortunately, he had gained an extra 20 years through the Grassendwood longevity pills. Understood, Master. Ding Songyin acknowledged, then thought for a moment and said, Senior sister is progressing rapidly. She should be ready to forge the second alien aperture for the White Tiger in about half a month. It would be best not to delay. Normally, after completing the Vermilion Bird Viscera installation, the pace of forging alien apertures slowed down. Many disciples with solid talent still needed a full year to forge the 4 alien apertures surrounding the White Tiger and prepare for that installation. Part of this was because the demands on one's heart and mind grew higher, and unless one didn't mind compounding difficulties down the line, everyone preferred to go slowly. The other part was that after the first Viscera installation, the sect would arrange for disciples to go on a journey to adapt to their body, temper their mind and spirit, and build combat experience. Forging apertures was simply not possible while away from the sect. Zheng Zhuxi, however, had cultivated a candle heart on her own, and had been tested by nightmares as well as several rounds of tempering from Ding Songyin, whether intentional or not. After her first Viscera installation, she could continue forging apertures without any Jianghu travels, and adapted faster than before. Her cultivation had not slowed at all. In fact, it had greatly accelerated. The candlelit Nocturne Sutra's Viscera installation sequence was Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, Black Turtle, then Azure Dragon. The Celestial Stars Scriptures sequence was Azure Dragon, Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, then Black Turtle. Hearing Ding Songyin's words, Tao Wenshu gave him a slightly surprised look, then smiled. Half a month is exactly when we'll be back. She let the smile fade and said to Ding Songyin, Pan Yunzhu's identity, background, and Jianghu record have been verified by the sect and the Martial Prohibition Bureau. Everything checks out. Have him come see me shortly. Oh, didn't I say before that I would help you trace your origins and find your family? You did say that, but I never agreed to it at the time. Ding Songyin couldn't help grumbling inwardly. He had originally had no intention of looking into the origins of this body, but after learning that the demon's sovereign was possibly a transmigrator, he had somewhat changed his mind. If I really transmigrated in winter and didn't inhabit Ding Songyin's body until more than half a year later, why was I able to transmigrate at all? My original theory was that transmigration requires the same name and roughly simultaneous deaths. But in winter, Ding Songyin had only just joined the loving family. He wasn't even dead yet. Did something else happen to him around that time? Is that also why I lingered in the netherworld for more than half a year? The simplest way to clarify the matter would be to ask Jai Hanni, that unearned little sister of his, but Ding Songyin didn't have the nerve for that just yet, and couldn't find her anyway. So he had decided to start with Ding Songyin's origins. You found something? He asked, genuinely surprised and pleased. Tao Wenshu shook her head. No, only some broken threads. Ding Songyin did not press further, knowing his master would continue on her own. Tao Wenshu, wearing her plain iron crown, stepped out from behind the desk, gathered her thoughts, and said, The alias Qi Xiaoxiang used, Liu Yu's, comes from a real Liu family in the Chu province's Yujiang prefecture. You must have heard of them. As things now stand, the Liu family were all members of the Sage Severing Way. They relocated to Yujiang prefecture 20 or 30 years ago, put down roots in the lanes, cultivated wide neighborhood ties, built a livelihood, acquired land, and played out the rise and fall of a family. As long as no one traced back to the family's origins, anyone, court or sect or noble family, would believe them to be a clean and moderately prosperous merchant family. Had it not been for the Zhen household affair exposing them, it would have been very difficult to find anything suspicious about them. Their family members reached at most the Great Proliferation realm. They either had unnoticeable physical anomalies or they cultivated different arts. Their years of operation served two purposes: to supply the Sage Severing Way with material resources, and to provide genuine, credible, clean identities when the Sage Severing Way needed them. It was by relying on the Liu family's background that Qin Nuansheng passed the vetting and married into the Zhen household. The Nine Evils demoness and the others used the same method to deceive the authorities and the Zhen household. To that end, they also spent a month living in Yujiang prefecture, under the banner of a distant branch's daughter coming back to visit family, so the neighbors could get to know them and learn the story they had constructed. Only then did they travel to Dingjiang Prefecture to seek out Qin Nuanshang, using the Liu family's own decline as a convenient excuse. Starting from March of last year, any Liu family member who left for trade, study, or martial training never returned. By June, only a few women remained in the household. Once you entered the Zhen household as a storyteller, they quickly sold off the residence and storefronts under the pretense of returning to the countryside due to the family's decline, then left Yujiang Prefecture without a trace. Ding Songyin listened and clicked his tongue inwardly. What an elaborate deception, and that many frauds. The Sage Severing Way had a long history with deep expertise in deception. Who knew how many genuine identities they had built up across the countries of the north and south? It was entirely possible that some centuries-old noble families were Sage Severing Way beneath the surface. Tao Wenshu looked at her disciple and spoke gravely. I'm telling you this as a warning. If you ever encounter the Sage Severing Way in the future, never let your guard down and think that only the people right in front of you are suspect. The entire staff of a trading company, every neighbor in a whole lane, all of them could be Sage Severing Way members. 3 people repeating a rumor can make it true. All the more so when you have this many who appear to have no connection to one another. I am not skilled in deception myself, but I have had dealings with the Sage Severing Way and read the Martial Prohibition Bureau's classified records. I once tried to categorize their methods. Some favor honey traps, some prefer to deceive and sow chaos alone, but most involve a group of people each playing their part, each performing a different role in an act. This is the approach that best conceals their activities and achieves their goals. Qin Nuansheng was the honey trap, Master Yan was the lone operative, and Demoness Jai had assembled a whole troop of heretics to play the loving family. Ding Songyin quickly matched each example to its category. Of course, Master Yan had had no choice in the matter. He had no helpers, and no hands either. Ding Songyin chose his words carefully. The 3 methods aren't mutually exclusive. The first 2 can be folded into the third. Qin Nuanshang, for instance, was the role in the Liu family's grand performance who specialized in the honey trap. Indeed, I'm relieved you can generalize from one case to many, Tao Wenshu said with a short laugh. On this front, do guide Juxi from time to time. Her nature is too straightforward and upright, so she is easily taken in by deceptions. That may have been true a few months ago, but now. Ding Songyin felt his master had a very incomplete picture of just how much his senior sister had grown. In his view, beyond her growth in heart and mind, her faster aperture forging and viscera installation, and her sword work advancing by leaps and bounds, the biggest change in his senior sister was a sharp wariness toward all manner of deceptions. Tao Wenshu brought the conversation back to the point. During the month the 9 Evils Demoness and the others stayed with the Liu family in Yujiang Prefecture, you were there too, right from the start. This was confirmed by multiple neighbors, who all said that at first you seemed somewhat vacant and dazed, as though you had suffered a serious shock, and only gradually recovered, becoming timid and skittish. Our investigation had originally stalled there. We suspected you had been brought to Yujiang Prefecture by Jai Hani, Qi Zioxiang, or one of the others from New Yu or the Gan Kingdom. Any further inquiry was beyond our reach. Qi Zioxiang and Li Zhai were primarily active in the Gan Kingdom and New Yu, which was why Tao Wenshu had said so. A new lead came up later, Ding Songyin asked helpfully. Tao Wenshu gave a slight nod. There was an unexpected find when we were verifying Pan Yunju's background. The 2 matters are connected. Ding Songyin was immediately on guard. Tao Wenshu gave a slight smile. I thought the same at first, but on closer examination it turned out to be a genuine coincidence. Don't be misled by the fact that one is in Chu Province's Yujiang Prefecture and the other is in Bao Province's Eastern Plains Prefecture. They aren't far apart at all. One is north of Heavenly Lake and the other is east of it, so they're close neighbors. The reason the Pan family chose to settle in the Eastern Plains Prefecture was because of the Sovereign Zai School. The school's stellar calendar is a time-based art with unspoken resonances with the Pan family's 12 resolutions of time, and the Sovereign Zai School's solar mastery art aligns with the assist the sun and moon, trait of Yi, the god of time, which might supplement the sun-moon divine saber. But by the time the Pan family actually arrived in Eastern Plains Prefecture, the 12 resolutions of time had been completely lost, and they never had the means to move elsewhere after that. The Sovereign's Eye School was one of Great Zhao's 6 sects and 4 schools, a formidable top-tier faction. Sovereign's Eye referred to the celestial goddess Zith, not Fuxi. Fuxi was more commonly called the Azure Emperor, the Wood Emperor, Emperor Tehao, and so on. Fuxi's tradition was on Evergreen Island in the Eastern Sea, one of the world's 5 sacred grounds, though a certain reclusive sect was said to hold it as well. When Pan Yunju first set out into the Jianghu, he traveled around the area near Heavenly Lake and passed through Yujiang Prefecture. Tao Wenshu saw her disciple deep in thought and waited a moment before continuing. While verifying that part of his history, one of the sect's stewards happened to find that someone had seen you in late September. Back then, Nine Evil's demoness and the others had not yet arrived in Yujiang Prefecture. You told stories for a few days in Immortal Grotto County, which falls under Yujiang Prefecture's jurisdiction, and then disappeared. Later on, someone apparently saw you wandering for a long time near Jejia village outside the city. I called a halt to any further investigation. This may be something you need to pursue yourself. It's not convenient for the sect to look too deeply into the matter. She sensed that this body may have had some secrets in its past, and she chose to respect that and not pursue the matter further, unless I ask for help myself. A feeling Ding Songyan could not quite put into words welled up in his heart. Someone like me belongs in a sect like the Bright Knight sect, upright and above board, walking straight and sitting properly. I'd like to make a trip to Yujiang Prefecture soon, Ding Songyan said, with some hesitation. His hesitation came from the fact that his senior sister would be away from the sect for a while and couldn't accompany him, leaving no one to shoulder his feats if things went wrong. He was weighing whether to wait until February instead. The decision is yours. If you decide to go, I'll apply for a flying vessel on your behalf so you can get there and back quickly, Tao Wenshu said gently. In her heart, she was not keen on sending the sect's greatest hope to another province. The journey alone would take many days. She would have preferred him staying safely at the sect, forging apertures and training. But a martial artist's cultivation could never be achieved by staying shut away. Travel and broader experience were essential. Tao Wenshu had originally planned to wait until Ding Songyan had condensed his first void aperture and stabilized his Grandmaster realm before letting him travel the Jianghu, and even then only within Ning province. But since this concerned his origins and family, if he truly wanted to go to Chu province or Bao province, she could only agree. She would pay the cost of applying for a flying vessel so he could reach his destination in a single day and reduce the risks along the way. Ding Songyan thanked his master and said he would think it over a little more before deciding when to set out. Tao Wenshu told him there was no rush. Even if she was not in the sect, he could apply through Grand Elder Wang Zhou or Elder Yan Jinxian. After a brief silence, Tao Wenshu smiled warmly. On this trip to Flame Capital, I'll keep an eye out for life-extending items and try to gather some for you. Whether as sect master or as your master, I can't simply watch you spend your lifespan helping the sect revise the aperture forging and viscera installation methods and do nothing in return. The reason she hadn't given him any before was simply that the sect had none. Life-extending items, while not as rare as immortality pills, were among the most sought-after things in the world. Individuals who obtained them usually consumed them on the spot, and when a sect acquired some, a whole line of grand elders and elders who had made great contributions would be waiting for their share, making it difficult to keep any in reserve for more than a month. It's only incidental to my own cultivation, Ding Songyan said by way of modest deflection, though he did not decline. His martial work at the moment was centered mainly on the 7 swords of candlelit night and the celestial stars' sword art. The candle flame True Qi and myriad star True Qi naturally needed to be raised to match, otherwise relying solely on the presence-absence myriad forms Qi to drive them would fall noticeably short. As for techniques that could work in conjunction with the presence-absence myriad forms Qi, he had created very few of his own so far. There was only the fast-slow sword, and similar things evolved from the sword Intent of Winter. There was still a great deal of work ahead of Ding Songyan on the martial path, but he had only leapt to greatness in half a year, and at present his main focus was still on feeling out the aperture forging and viscera installation methods and building up his foundational techniques. After going over the relevant matters, Tao Wenshu asked Ding Songyan to bring Pan Yunju to the purple forbidden chamber. Pan Yunju had half expected this. He couldn't help trembling slightly as he waited patiently for the sect master to speak. Tao Wenshu looked at him and considered for a moment before speaking. We have verified your background, but if you wish to use the celestial stars scripture to complete the myriad stars canon, you must agree to 2 conditions. I am all ears, Pan Yunju said with great deference. Tao Wenshu glanced at Ding Songyan beside her. First, after you submit the myriad stars canon, you will not be permitted to consult the celestial stars scripture directly. We have elders and disciples skilled in this area who will complete the gaps on your behalf. You will then review their derived results, discuss and refine the details with them, and finally attempt the practice yourself. Do you agree? A layer of separation. I'm not allowed to look at the aperture forging and viscera installation methods of the celestial stars scripture directly, and everything would be secondhand. Pan Yunju's thoughts churned. After a moment, he steeled himself. I agree. This was his last hope. He had to see it through, whatever it took. Tao Wenshu asked gravely, Second, given this arrangement, no one can serve as your formal master. You can only be counted as an entry-level disciple. But when I instruct Songyan and Juxi, you may sit in and listen. Do you agree? Compared to the first condition, this was a trivial matter. Pan Yunju answered without hesitation. I agree to it. I'll pack my things at once and return home to retrieve the myriad stars canon. Return home. Eastern Plains Prefecture. Something stirred in Ding Songyan's heart. Ding Songyan studied Pan Yunju's back with great care, finding it broad and wide, the perfect shape to shoulder his problems. For some reason, Pan Yunju inexplicably shivered, then noticed that his junior brother was watching him with a broad smile. Junior brother Ding is that delighted about using the myriad stars canon to supplement the celestial stars scripture. Pan Yunju was baffled. Just then, he saw Ding Songyan step to his side and cup his hands in a bow to Tao Wenshu. Master, this matter is of great importance and senior brother Pan needs a trustworthy escort. Though I am unworthy, I am willing to make the journey to Eastern Plains Prefecture. W.H. Pan Yunju racked his brains and never would have guessed that his junior brother intended to accompany him to retrieve the aperture forging and viscera installation methods and the specific martial arts from the myriad stars canon. Even though it did sound reasonable, as something this important warranted the Bright Knight sect sending someone along, it should have been at the very least be a third-rank form transfigured disciple or a steward to bear such a heavy responsibility. He was an early Great Proliferation Realm martial artist who had not yet received a ranking. However gifted in the martial arts, he would only be a burden. Junior sister Zheng would have been suitable now. After all, she had fought and killed a 4th-rank mortal surpassed martial artist back when she was in the early Great Proliferation Realm, and she was currently at the mid-Great Proliferation Realm. Tao Wenshu didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. Songyan, if you really want to use this as an excuse to go investigate his origins in Yujiang Prefecture, you could simply say so. Pan Yunju would surely understand. There is no need to exploit him. But then, this is just his usual way of doing things. Fine, Tao Wenshu said with an inward sigh. I'll apply to the Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau for a flying vessel on your behalf, so the road doesn't bring unwanted complications. Junior brother Ding doesn't know any better, but Sect Master Tao, you are fine with this too. Pan Yunju nearly blurted it out in shock. He quickly suppressed the reaction and didn't dare object, for fear of jeopardizing the whole affair. Whatever the Sect Master says, goes. Besides, I'm no match for junior brother Ding. I lose every sparring session. If I can travel back and forth between Eastern Plains Prefecture and Dingjiang Prefecture on my own, then certainly he can too. Having another person along counts as an extra pair of hands. And with junior brother Ding coming along, the sect master would apply for a flying vessel, sparing us the long overland journey which is the most dangerous part. Yes, sect master, Pan Yunju agreed. Ding Songyan thanked his master, then turned aside and said with a sudden grin, Senior brother Pan, to be honest, I have important business that requires me to visit Yujiang Prefecture. I thought it would be nice to have company. He was perfectly open about it and concealed nothing. Tao Wenshu, watching from the side, raised an eyebrow ever so slightly. He actually said it. Isn't this more Juxi's style? When did Songyan start showing this side? His honesty in the past usually concealed some ulterior motive. Pan Yunju was momentarily thrown, and needed a moment to collect himself before laughing. Then let's go to Yujiang Prefecture first. Handle junior brother Ding's matter first. Once we retrieve the later volumes of the Myriad Stars canon, we would take the flying vessel back to Dingjiang Prefecture at once. A secret manual shouldn't be carried around outside for long. Ding Songyan returned to his courtyard, dug out his travel pack, and began packing clothes. In the biting cold wind, he heard a knock at the gate. Outside stood Zheng Zhuxi in a red jacket and white skirt. Why not wait for me to return to the mountain before heading to Yujiang Prefecture? Why all this haste? Zheng Zhuxi asked in her clear, bright voice. Ding Songyan considered for a moment and gave her an honest answer. For one thing, I've always been this way. Once I've made up my mind to do something, I start right away without delay, to avoid complications down the road. For another, you have the heart and mind for it, senior sister. You don't need to hone yourself out there before reaching the perfected Great Proliferation realm. Tagging along to Yujiang Prefecture would only waste your cultivation time. Once you've installed your last non-human organ, I should have my realm fairly well stabilized. We can travel the Jianghu together then. Zheng Zhuxi's expression gradually softened. She studied Ding Songyan for a moment, then broke into a sudden smile. I was only teasing. You really should go as soon as possible, the sooner the better. That's my line, Ding Songyan laughed. You taught it to me. Zheng Zhuxi gave a quiet laugh, then reined in her expression. My mother must have forgotten to mention something just now. She probably assumed you already knew. Seeing his senior sister turn serious, Ding Songyan adopted the posture of someone all ears. Zheng Zhuxi pressed her lips together and said, Immortal Grotto County in Yujiang Prefecture sits beside Immortal Grotto Mountain. Before the Yaoqiang dynasty, Immortal Grotto Mountain on the shores of Heavenly Lake was also a place where one could witness visions of the heavenly realm, just like Heaven's Gate Lookout Island and Mount Deek. In those days, the visions of the heavenly realm would be reflected in the Great Lake as well, which is how Heavenly Lake got its name. Doesn't that fit perfectly? Ding Songyan's spirits lifted. Zheng Zhuxi continued, The demon sovereign is connected to Mount Deek and has shown an interest in Heaven's Gate Lookout Island, so he may well frequent Immortal Grotto Mountain on the north shore of Heavenly Lake too. With winter not yet over and the ground still frozen, he is likely still in Dingjiang Prefecture. If you head to Yujiang Prefecture quickly, you can avoid him entirely. Ding Songyan didn't know whether the court had laid any traps or ambushes for Tan Guanchen in Dingjiang Prefecture. At any rate, he had neither seen nor heard of any sign of movement. You're getting sharper all the time, senior sister. Ding Songyan offered his silent praise, then added to Zheng Zhuxi's point. Yan Changqing said that after Demoness Jai changed her cultivation method, she would break through to the Heaven Man realm within 1 to 2 years. Half a year has already passed. If I keep delaying, she might just break out and come to Yujiang Prefecture herself, chasing the secrets the demon sovereign and the others are hiding. If Ding Songyan had encountered something in Immortal Grotto County, met with some mishap, and then been chosen by Demoness Jai as her pawn, then Demoness Jai may well have noticed something was off. Once she broke through to the Heaven Man realm, there was a real chance she would return to Yujiang Prefecture. This matter truly had to be investigated soon, the sooner the better. You must also be extremely careful. If there's any danger, it's better to give it up, Zheng Zhuxi said, pressing her lips together and giving the instruction earnestly. That the demon sovereign was still in Dingjiang Prefecture, and the Nine Evils demoness still in seclusion were both only speculation. Neither was certain. I will. I'll read the situation as I go. If I catch a whiff of them, I'll clear out of Yujiang Prefecture immediately, Ding Songyan said in a joking tone, so his senior sister wouldn't worry too much. Zheng Zhuxi thought it over and said, The Sovereign's Eye School is in Eastern Plains Prefecture and has several supreme masters among its ranks. The Imperial Ruins are also in Bao Province, and Ruins Master Xingmo is one of the 3 sages of the realm. In Chu Province, where Yujiang Prefecture is located, there are the Shenong Hall and the 9 Realms School. The 9 Realms School's master, Zhu Jingzhi, is a sage as well. Whether it's the demon sovereign or the 9 Evils demoness, both will keep themselves very much in check in that territory. If you run into trouble, don't forget to seek help from the court and from reputable orthodox sects. Ding Songyan gave an affirming sound, then smiled. Thank you for the reminder, senior sister. Zheng Zhuxi couldn't help shooting him a sideways glance. Stop smiling like that. This is important. Your life is at stake. I've taken note, Ding Songyin replied, quite seriously. Zheng Zhuxi let out a slow breath, and her dimples appeared briefly. Go quickly and come back soon. Will do, Ding Songyin agreed. Zheng Zhuxi wrinkled her nose and sighed. I almost want to skip Changhua and Flame Capital and come along to Yujiang Prefecture with you. But if something really happened, I'd only end up holding you back and getting in the way of your escape. She had long had a rough sense of Ding Songyin's true capabilities. It's not that serious. Setting Demoness Jai aside, why would the Demon Sovereign care about someone like me? I'm accompanying senior brother Pan back to Eastern Plains Prefecture and just stopping by Yujiang Prefecture on the way. There are so many people coming and going along the north shore of Heavenly Lake every day. Who would think anything was suspicious about me? Ding Songyin offered the well-meaning lie. His senior sister didn't know about the transmigration, nor that the Demon Sovereign was a suspected transmigrator. And Demoness Jai won't reach the Heaven Man realm that quickly. If we're both at the Grandmaster level, and I can't beat her within Great Zhao's borders, can't I at least run away? Only then did Zheng Zhuxi relax slightly. Ding Songyin changed the subject. Will you also be traveling to Changhua and Flame Capital by flying vessel? Yes, Zheng Zhuxi nodded. My father is a senior counselor. Under court protocol, he is entitled to use a flying vessel without any special application. Are flying vessels dangerous? I worry they might be like Zhengheng's wooden kite carriage, Ding Songyin asked, concerned. Zheng Zhuxi laughed. The Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau's mechanisms are far more reliable than Zhengheng's. Besides, my father can fly. He's more than capable of protecting my mother and me. There will also be 1 or 2 martial artists at the Great Proliferation Realm capable of flight on board as a precaution against accidents. That's a relief, Ding Songyin said with a nod and a smile. The following morning, on a remarkably level training ground south of Linjiang County, with packs on their backs, Ding Songyin and Pan Yunju waited patiently for the flying vessel to arrive. Zheng Zhuxi had left with her parents the previous afternoon. After about half an hour, a shadow suddenly closed in from the sky. A massive structure resembling a tower ship, but only 3 stories tall, came hurtling in on the beating of a dozen pairs of gold andiron wings, accompanied by a deafening roar. It drew rapidly closer, descended gradually, and landed in the center of the training ground, sending clouds of dust billowing in all directions. Gazing at the vessel, roughly 40 meters in length, wound with colorful ribbons, and painted in gold and vivid hues at every turn, Pan Yunju was struck with awe, coming to appreciate the fearsome nature of mechanical constructs from an entirely different angle. I've never ridden a flying vessel before, he murmured to Ding Songyin. Great Zhao had few flying vessels. For one thing, they were extraordinarily expensive to build. For another, their reliability had to be guaranteed. At present, only the court's Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau, the Ministry of War, and the various top-tier powers had them. Officials of the 3rd rank, and above who needed to use one, could simply request it from the Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau. A non-top-tier sect like the Bright Knight sect had to apply. That Tao Wenshu had been able to dispatch a flying vessel so quickly was partly due to the enormous cost involved, and partly because senior counselor Zheng Ziming had served as an intermediary. Ding Songyin observed with keen interest, noticing that the stern of the vessel appeared to have large openings fitted with metal blades, from which residual airflow was slowly venting. Rotor blades, jet propulsion, biomimetic wings. What a bizarre combination. Ding Songyin couldn't help pursing his lips. Had he not long since returned all that knowledge to his teachers back in school, and were he not now so absorbed in the martial path, he would have found some way to rope in Zhengheng and study it together. Still, he suspected, Zhengheng would propose summoning the remnant soul of a worm from the underworld and fusing it into the flying vessel, at which point it would be a genuine dragon carriage. Once the flying vessel had come to a full stop and lowered its wooden gangway, Ding Songyin took the lead and boarded with Pan Yunju in tow. Before they had even reached the deck, he was already making a joke. Senior brother Pan, just like the literal meaning of your name, Cloud Boat. It's now finally the real thing. Pan Yunju glanced down at the ground, thought about soaring to great heights in a moment, and felt a sudden inexplicable flutter in his chest. He hesitated before asking, Junior brother Ding, aren't you afraid to ride this thing? If it breaks down at high altitude, what then? Ding Songyin laughed softly. Not at all. I can fly. Seeing his junior brother utterly fearless and full of nerve, Pan Yunju thought better of saying anything further, lest this martial prodigy thought less of him. The two of them quickly finished climbing the wooden gangway and stepped aboard the flying vessel. It had a deck and 3 stories of cabin space, but no ship's rudder, mast, or sail to be seen. Why bother with a deck at all? What's the point? Couldn't they have just made it all cabin space? Is it just to make it look like a ship? Ding Songyin muttered to himself. Pan Yunju knew nothing about mechanical constructs and could only pretend he hadn't heard, so as not to reveal his ignorance. Ding Songyin glanced at him and grumbled inwardly. Back in my past life, I would never have let a conversation drop like that when trying to make a good impression. Not knowing something doesn't mean you can't chat about it. Making people laugh is also a good thing. The worst thing is dead silence. Just then, 2 attendants, a man and a woman, came forward to meet them. Both were attractive and carried themselves well, though their clothing was remarkably thin, one in a vermilion scholar's robe, the other in a short jacket and gauze skirt, a stark contrast to the winter cold of the New Year season. Standing beside each other, they spoke in unison. "Honored guests, please step inside the cabin." Ding Songyin glanced at the attendants, then walked toward the cabin at an unhurried, entirely unbridled pace. Pan Yunju, who had never experienced anything like this before, had his junior brother as a model to follow, and managed to appear outwardly calm despite being a little stiff. The moment they entered the cabin, both felt a warmth like spring. The floor was laid with thick carpets of exotic design, and copper pipes were faintly visible along the corners of the walls. 2 rows of tables and chairs were fixed into the floor, and bronze wall lanterns shaped like flowering branches extended outward from the walls around them, though none were lit. 2 martial artists were waiting inside, both in their 20s and wearing dark red combat attire. The man had slight mousy features that gave him a mildly comical air. The back of his clothing was absent, replaced by a thick layer of long gray-white fur. The woman had ears like a wildcat, a faintly pink nose tip, and large, round eyes. She wasn't especially striking, but had a bright, cute charm about her. Taking in the 2 of them and combining what he saw with senior sister Zheng's briefing the day before, she being a seasoned flying vessel traveler, information rapidly surfaced in Ding Songyin's mind. Martial artists capable of flight as early as the mid-Great Proliferation realm. The man should be from the Heavenly Pool School. The woman is clearly from the Fish Dragon House. The Heavenly Pool School and the Fish Dragon House were both sects near Flame Capital, in the court's orbit, and had close ties with the Ministry of War, the Ministry of Justice, the Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau, the Martial Prohibition Bureau, and various commanders and generals. For a sect like the Bright Knight sect, perhaps 20–30% of disciples might join the military, enter government service, or work for local offices. For the Heavenly Pool School and the Fish Dragon House, it was over 70%, and they held no independent patrol authority of their own. Of the 2, the Heavenly Pool School had originally been a northern sect located on Heavenly Pool Mountain and wasn't a top-tier power. When the dynasty crossed south, rather than submit to foreign rule, they followed and resettled in Flame Capital, keeping the Heavenly Pool name. Their specialties were the Windrain Divine Sword and nighttime assassination. They could fly through the air at the mid-Great Proliferation realm, though not to great heights. At altitude, they could only glide down. Quite a few other sects had made the same southward migration as the Heavenly Pool School. Some even renamed the mountains in their new territories, so that over time, peaks that had originally belonged to other regions effectively appeared locally. The same had happened during past dynastic changes, repeatedly. As a result, the thing Ding Songyin found most confusing when reading the secret classic of mountains and seas was the mountain names, river names, and geographical locations, because they were almost completely impossible to match up. Combining the characteristics of their techniques with their physical features, Ding Songyin and Zheng Zhuxi had agreed that the Heavenly Pool School's lineage derived from the flying squirrel. Flying squirrel. Shaped like a rabbit but with a rat's head, it flies on its back. The result of consuming it allows one to frolic in wind and rain and melt into the deep of night. Because their flight came from the fur on their backs, the Heavenly Pool School could achieve at the mid-Great Proliferation realm what others couldn't manage until the Dharma realm. Someone like Ding Songyin or Zheng Ziming had to forge a void aperture and condense the corresponding wings before they could soar freely, and even then, the speed was lacking. As for those whose corresponding divine beast had no wings, or whose lineage lacked any such trait, they couldn't fly even at the spirit platform realm. They could only glide short distances on the wind. The fish dragon house's lineage, by contrast, was suspected to derive from the dragonfish. Dragonfish, shaped like a wildcat, cries like a newborn, four-legged and single-horned. The result of consuming it lets one ride the clouds and mist, pass through water and pierce mountains, and roam all 9 provinces. Masters of this sect could fly through the sky and manipulate clouds and mist, dive underwater, and pass through mountains and ridges. Their movement speed was also exceptional. Their weakness was close combat. They relied entirely on mobility, agility, and the principle that speed conquers all. Attaching themselves to the court and drawing on its mechanism resources was a fairly shrewd choice. Ding Songyan, Bright Knight Sect. Ding Songyan cupped his hands in greeting. Pan Yunju followed and gave his own name. Pan Yunju, Bright Knight Sect. Even though he was in a hurry to go home and retrieve the Myriad Stars cannon and hadn't yet gone through the formal entry ceremony, Tao Wenshu had given her word, which meant that there would be no backing out. He was already a bona fide Bright Knight Sect disciple. Ren Jityu, Heavenly Pool School. Wei Ling, Fish Dragon House. The 2 martial artists returned the greeting together, cupping their hands. Ding Songyan gave Wei Ling a second glance. A Nikomusum or catgirl wasn't something you saw every day. From her physical features, he judged that she had not yet reached the late Great Proliferation realm. When Wei Ling did, a short fleshy horn would grow from her forehead. The dragonfish had a horn because it carried true dragon bloodline, and the fish dragon house could convert to true dragon cultivation arts. Once Ding Songyan and Pan Yunju had taken their seats, Wei Ling said in a youthful voice, "You may want to lock your chairs first. The takeoff can be a bit rough." Seatbelts, essentially. Ding Songyan felt a strangely familiar sensation. He gave an inward laugh, then worked the chair's mechanism with practiced ease, letting the slim golden iron rods wrapped in thick leather extend outward and lock him in place. Pan Yunju swallowed with some difficulty, momentarily uncertain which was more dangerous: the long overland trek back to Eastern Plains Prefecture in Bao Province, or riding this flying vessel. Seeing his expression, Wei Ling laughed. "There's no need to worry, you two. Brother Ren and I can both fly. Short of an enemy attack, even if this vessel broke apart, we could still bring at least 4 people down safely without a scratch." Pan Yunju relaxed immediately on hearing this, and curiosity swiftly followed. "You can actually be attacked in midair. People who can fly aren't common, but they aren't rare either, especially in the Dharma realm." Wei Ling was cheerful by nature and explained as she walked back to her seat with Ren Jityu. "Besides, Jiguran skilled in mechanisms don't all serve Great Zhao exclusively, and martial artists who can summon lightning or wind can attack flying vessels too. Otherwise, there would be nothing to counter flying vessels, and air superiority is very important." Ding Songyan looked around with keen interest. Not long after Wei Ling, Ren Jityu, and the 2 attendants had locked their own chairs, the flying vessel began to tremble. Its dozen pairs of golden iron wings beat in unison, whipping up a violent torrent of wind. A tremendous roar rose from beneath their feet, as though torrents of air were surging toward the vessel's stern. Then Pan Yunju felt himself flung upward, only to be caught by the leather-wrapped rods of his seat. For the next quarter of an hour, he felt as if he had been thrown into a raging storm, tossed and shaken until his head spun. Gradually, the flying vessel steadied. The roaring continued unabated, but the jolting settled considerably, much like drifting in a boat on a lake. This stable. How does it manage that? Ding Songyan couldn't fathom the principle and found the whole thing both astonishing and amusing. "You can unlock now," Wei Ling told the 2 of them. Ding Songyan, perfectly at ease as if returning home, worked the mechanism and waited for the leather rods to retract, then stood, picked up Frostshade, and walked to the side of the cabin. The windows here were made from a special material resembling ice crystals. Even with gale-force winds howling outside and the cold pressing in, they did not crack. No wonder the manufacturing costs are so high. Ding Songyan turned his gaze to the view outside. The flying vessel soared like a great rock, gliding beneath the clouds without climbing too high, yet despite the churning air currents it remained remarkably steady. It was something Ding Songyan couldn't work out no matter how he thought about it. Watching the cities below shrunk to the size of toys and the crowds reduced to ants, Ding Songyin first felt a wave of nostalgia for his past life, then a stirring sensation. Above and below are so starkly defined at this moment. Above and below, the 6 directions. Ding Songyin picked up Frostshade and walked toward the cabin door. Young hero Ding, the gale outside is fierce. One moment of inattention and it could sweep you right off the vessel. Unless you have the strength to handle it, it's best to stay inside, Ren Jityu said, rising to give the warning. That's right, Pan Yunju agreed. He was still shaken from the earlier lurching and jolting. Even now he hadn't dared undo the mechanism on his own seat. Ding Songyin smiled and asked, what level of strength would be needed to go out? In terms of realm, the early Great Proliferation realm is enough. But in terms of actual ability, 5th rank Profound Discerned is preferable, Ren Jityu told him in all seriousness. He himself was 4th rank Mortal Surpassed. Wei Ling was the same rank, though her rating was less of a true reflection. When facing stronger opponents, she would fly into the air and deploy mechanisms or hidden weapons. As long as the enemy had no counter to that approach, she remained undefeatable. Then I qualify. Ding Songyin gestured toward Pan Yunju. I haven't been ranked yet, but senior brother Pan has 5th rank Profound Discerned ability, and I'm about on par with him. You flatter me. When Pan Yunju noticed Ren Jityu and Wei Ling looking his way, he said honestly, Junior brother Ding's ability surpasses mine. Given his mature appearance and visible physical anomalies, Ren Jityu and Wei Ling had both taken Pan Yunju to be mid-Great Proliferation realm, at least 5th rank Profound Discerned. And yet he was saying that his junior brother, who showed no physical anomalies at all, was stronger than him. Worthy of being Sword of Rectitude Tao Wenshu's personal disciple, both martial artists thought to themselves. They actually knew quite clearly who Ding Songyin and Pan Yunju were. When Tao Wenshu applied to the Ingenious Mechanisms Bureau for the flying vessel, she had provided the relevant details. After all, such a costly mechanical construct would suffer no small loss if someone managed to sneak aboard to steal secrets or cause sabotage. That was precisely why Ren Jityu and Wei Ling had not made small talk with Ding Songyin and Pan Yunju earlier. Given Sword of Rectitude Tao Wenshu's reputation, applying for a flying vessel on behalf of 2 disciples of modest ability meant there must be sufficient reason. This indicated the matter was not necessarily of great importance, but was certainly highly confidential. Time was not to be wasted on the road. Once Ren Jityu and Wei Ling both gave a nod, Ding Songyin opened the cabin door. A howling gale poured in at once, carrying a bone-deep chill that swept away the spring-like warmth. Ding Songyin didn't call upon the Chaos Realm. He endured the bitter cold and fierce wind and stepped out onto the deck, remembering to pull the door shut behind him. The deck was already damp, the moisture continuously freezing into a thin layer of ice. Ding Songyin stood by the ship's rail, gazing up at the layered pale clouds overhead from time to time before looking down at the mountains and rivers below, as well as closing his eyes to feel the wind and cold. His mind and spirit slowly sank into this expanse of sky and earth, searching and contemplating with deep focus. Inside the cabin, Pan Yunju finally found the courage to undo his seat's mechanism. He left his seat, moved to the front of the cabin, and peered through the crystal-clear windows at Ding Songyin. Seeing his junior brother enter that faraway, contemplative state again, Pan Yunju's thoughts suddenly raced. He hesitated for a moment, then steeled himself, pushed the door open, and stepped out while trembling. He moved close to Ding Songyin and imitated him, gazing up at the sky, looking down at the ground, letting his body feel the wind, hoping to grasp something from this scene. At the cabin doorway, Wei Ling and Ren Jityu stared, a little dumbstruck. Are all Bright Night sect people like this? After some time, Ding Songyin's mind and spirit gradually withdrew from the expanse of sky and earth. His understanding of establishing the 6 directions had deepened. Before the new year, after extracting the lesser limitless art from the diagram of the Great Change, Wei Attainment, Ding Songyin had also gradually extracted the traits of establishing the 6 directions and dividing the 4 seasons, and bringing all things into unity from it. He had decided to name his fundamental art the Chaos Scripture. It currently comprised the 9 primal arts, the forward-reverse circulation, the diagram of the Great Change, Wei Attainment, and a chapter of aperture forging methods for alien apertures covering only 56 locations for now. The chaos scripture had in turn given rise to three derivative arts. First, the lesser limitless art corresponding to manifesting the way and its virtue. Second, the Heaven-Earth Cosmos chapter developed from establishing the 6 directions and dividing the 4 seasons. And third, the scripture of returning to stillness rooted in bringing all things into unity. All three currently only reached the human realm's aperture refinement. Banishing demons and warding off evil could not be extracted as a separate component. Training any of the 3 arts, the lesser limitless art, the Heaven-Earth Cosmos chapter, or the scripture of returning to stillness, would produce a similar effect. The scripture of returning to stillness had the strongest demon-banishing power, the lesser limitless art was second, and the Heaven-Earth Cosmos chapter was barely better than nothing. Besides Zheng Zhuxi, Ding Songyan had also had Su Chang'an take up the lesser limitless art, an extra hour to 2 hours squeezed in each day, without affecting his training of the blameless profound art. The Heaven-Earth Cosmos chapter lacked the manifesting the way and its virtue, trait, and was difficult to combine with other martial arts. Everyone around Ding Songyan was already at the human realm at minimum and could no longer switch their cultivation path, so he had yet to find a suitable inheritor to verify its effects. The scripture of returning to stillness, on the other hand, could be practiced by anyone. However, it was domineering. After condensing half of the apertures, it would completely convert and dissolve the practitioner's original martial arts, leaving only the returning to stillness true qi. This would cause anyone above the mid-stage of aperture refinement to regress in realm. Ding Songyan had therefore abandoned any thought of promoting it, hoping only that someday someone just beginning the martial path might obtain this opportunity. As for Yang Shiduo, Ding Songyan hadn't thought about having him learn any of his own arts. Yang Shiduo's role was to verify Ding Songyan's martial theories and concepts through other martial arts. That said, they had known each other long enough to count as genuine acquaintances. If Yang Shiduo truly requested to practice the lesser limitless art or the scripture of returning to stillness, Ding Songyan wouldn't refuse. Phew! Beyond the sword intent of winter and summer and the fast-slow sword, the sword intent and techniques for the 6 directions feel like they're close to having a nascent form of one move. Taking in heaven and earth really is quite useful. Ding Songyan breathed out a cloud of white vapor. He turned his head and saw Pan Yunju, bundled in thick combat attire, shivering violently. Ice crystals had formed on his eyebrows and beard stubble, and on the hair beneath his square-settled cap. You don't have manifesting the way and its virtue, so what are you copying me for? Ding Songyan found it quite funny. Without the manifesting the way and its virtue trait, even he himself could only rely on the knowledge framework from his past life and a reasonably sharp mind to work toward insights slowly. It might take several years to get anywhere. He certainly couldn't be having small and large moments of enlightenment everywhere he went like he did now. Still, Ding Songyan couldn't help but feel a touch of admiration. Senior Brother Pan's drive to improve himself and his burning desire to restore his family's glory gives him a truly unyielding will. That's worthy of respect. Sensing Ding Songyan's gaze, Pan Yunju opened his eyes and said through chattering teeth, "The sky and earth are so vast. It has broadened my horizons and stirred something within me." It was the truth. It was his first time soaring through the sky and looking down upon the land. "Did you grasp anything, Senior Brother Pan?" Ding Songyan teased. Pan Yunju managed a strained smile. "My talents are thin and my learning shallow, so I have nothing yet. What about you, Junior Brother Ding?" "I was wondering, what determines above and below and how do they come to be divided?" Ding Songyan was in good spirits and offered Pan Yunju a hint. What he had been pondering was this: before above and below took shape, that was when chaos remained unopened. And afterward, how had above and below differentiated, and how had chaos been split open? The answer might only become clear once he traveled north to the 9 Heavens sect someday and experienced the heaven-opening skill firsthand. Pan Yunju immediately fell into deep thought, but couldn't work out anything useful for his martial arts. "Let's go back inside and think it over there," Ding Songyan called out. "You're mid-great proliferation realm, barely keeping the cold at bay with true qi and thick clothing. How could you compare with a grandmaster who can divide the 4 seasons and is unaffected by heat and cold? If you actually got frostbitten, who would shoulder my feats when we reach Yujiang Prefecture? A sick Pan Yunju felling all kinds of monsters doesn't sound right, does it? Pan Yunju gave a nod and followed Ding Songyan back inside. The spring-like warmth brought him back to life at once. The frost on his hair, eyebrows, and beard stubble gradually melted. He returned trembling to his seat, feeling as though each shudder was driving the cold that had seeped to his very bones out a little further. After cycling the star sequence True Qi through several circuits, Pan Yunju finally settled back to normal. Wei Ling's wildcat-like ears gave a small twitch. She looked curiously at Ding Songyan and Pan Yunju. "Young hero Ding, young hero Pan, what were you two doing on the deck just now?" "It looked a little strange to me." Ding Songyan smiled. "My master's husband often says that the Great Way has its own principles, and those principles live in the martial path, in the learning of the sages, and most of all in heaven and earth itself. If one can grasp the ultimate truth from the sages' learnings and from heaven and earth, then everything becomes interconnected, and one's own martial path advances greatly. Just now, finding myself in the sky with the earth spread out like a game board below, and the heavens seeming to converge overhead, I felt something stir within me and went to the deck to contemplate it. Unfortunately, my foundations are not yet solid enough, and I came away with nothing substantial to show for it. I have made a fool of myself in front of you both." After hearing Ding Songyan's reply, both Ren Jiyu and Wei Ling had formed a quite favorable impression of him. This young hero Ding is neither arrogant nor servile. He's modest and sincere. He had not deliberately brought up his master's husband's identity and had zero hint of showing off. And he had frankly admitted that his impromptu attempt at insight had come to nothing, without concealing a thing and without any hint of self-deprecation or embarrassment. A truly upright and honest gentleman. With that favorable impression formed, Wei Ling and Ren Jiyu fell into easy conversation with Ding Songyan and Pan Yunju about martial arts and various rumors, passing the time on the journey. Nearly 2 hours later, as noon approached, the two attendants from before came from the rear of the cabin carrying food boxes and laid out dishes for Ding Songyan and the others. There was roasted mutton and poached fatty chicken, 4 cold dishes and 4 hot, each in modest portions. After lunch, Ding Songyan glanced out the window from time to time, as if waiting for something. "Young hero Ding, what are you looking at?" Wei Ling asked, curious. Hadn't he already contemplated heaven and earth? Ding Songyan gave a self-deprecating smile. "It's inevitable that I'm a little worried about being attacked." He wasn't worried at all. He was actually hoping for one. If they were attacked, he could see what offensive capabilities this mechanical construct had. And if the flying vessel couldn't hold out, he could get some real experience fighting in the air. With the flying vessel drawing the vast majority of attention, he was fairly confident he could bring every passenger, attendant, and crew member aboard to safety. Ding Songyan waited and waited. The entire journey passed without incident. Apart from the occasional slight turbulence, the ride was smooth. Another 2 hours passed. Ren Jiyu and Wei Ling signaled them to take their seats and lock them again. Compared to the violent shaking of takeoff, the descent was far gentler, accompanied by a long glide. At last, the flying vessel landed on the training ground outside Huicheng County, the prefectural seat of Yujiang Prefecture. Ding Songyan undid his seat mechanism and said farewell to Wei Ling and Ren Jiyu. Seeing that neither of them showed any sign of leaving the vessel, he said with an easy laugh, "You're not going into the city to rest." Wei Ling smiled in response. "We're heading back to Flame Capital now. We should arrive after nightfall. During the New Year season, what inn on the road compares to home?" "Senior Brother Pan and I are in no position to hear that," Ding Songyan quipped, then turned and left the cabin, descending the wooden gangway. Once the flying vessel had taken off again, Ding Songyan reflected for a moment and murmured to himself, still quite a bit slower than an airplane. He then set off with Pan Yunju into Huicheng County, planning to stop at the local branch of the Bright Night Sex Hunksin Trading Company to borrow 2 horses for the road. The prefectural city was hung with lanterns and streamers, packed with people, and still thick with the festive atmosphere of the new year. This would continue all the way to the Lantern Festival. After walking for a while, Ding Songyan noticed a 3-story building off to one side ahead. Below it lay an open space surrounded by a large crowd. The clash of metal rang out from time to time, followed by bursts of cheering. "Is that a fighting stage?" Ding Songyan asked Pan Yunju, curious. Pan Yunju looked into the distance. "That should be a martial arts competition for marriage." That's such an old custom. Ding Songyin couldn't help but grumble inwardly. Seeing his confusion, Pan Yunju explained. That's probably some family that has lost their pillar and has no one promising in the current generation. So they simply recruit a powerful martial artist to anchor the household and give their descendants more time to grow. In these cases, besides marrying off a son or daughter, the family typically gives the couple a substantial share of the family property. Fourth and third-rank martial artists with no strong backing who have grown tired of wandering the Jianghu love this kind of arrangement. If it were just a fighting stage, Ding Songyin would have liked to test his sword. Hearing it was a martial arts competition for marriage, he decided to take a detour. Now that Pan Yunju was back in familiar territory, he was considerably more talkative. Martial arts competitions for marriage are very common in Chu and Bao provinces. The local way of things is to hold powerful martial artists in great reverence. A family without one to anchor it is easily exploited. That said, local martial artists and commoners alike are famous for their fierce and courageous spirit. Powerful people deserve respect, but if you bully them, they'll throw their lives away to make you pay. What's a few steps of bloodshed? Ding Songyin listened with great interest to these customs from a different region. Before long, the two found the Hunksin Trading Company. A steward with double pupils spotted Ding Songyin and Pan Yunju arriving and hurried forward to greet them. Would you be junior brothers Ding and Pan? After confirming their identities, the steward continued. The sect master sent a carrier pigeon yesterday instructing us to assist you both in any way we can. Do you need horses? Ding Songyin nodded first, then asked thoughtfully, has the trading company lost any goods recently? Has anyone given you trouble? Back at the sect, he had been wholly devoted to training and had no particular desire to wander the Jianghu. But now that he was out in the world, he couldn't help but feel the urge. My sword is not without its sharpness either. Otherwise, what was the point of all that martial theory and technique training? The Hunksin Trading Company's steward shook his head with a slightly blank expression. No. How disappointing. Don't protagonists in other stories always run into heaps of trouble the moment they step outside? Looks like I'll have to make my own opportunities. Right, I can test my sword before we reach Immortal Grotto County. Once we're there, I have to move quickly and decisively to avoid complications. Ding Songyin reached a rapid decision and smiled at the steward. Senior brother, we'll need 2 horses, within a quarter of an hour if possible. It has already been prepared. The steward let out a breath of relief and smiled. Ding Songyin glanced at Pan Yunju and gave a small nod. Senior brother Pan, there's no time to lose. Let's set out now. Freezing rain worse than snow came down in shards of ice, coating the rammed earth road to Immortal Grotto County in a layer of rime. It made the road unfit for horses at full gallop, and travelers coming and going had no choice but to find the nearest post station inn and wait for clearer weather the next day. Ding Songyin and Pan Yunju had barely led their horses to the entrance when a waiter came out to meet them, smiling his practiced, polite smile. Gentlemen, we have only a few standard rooms left at 40 copper coins per night. If you'd like to stable both horses, that's 5 liters of feed and 1 bundle of hay per horse, a separate total of 35 copper coins. Feed here meant black beans at 5 copper coins per liter. 2 rooms, Pan Yunju hadn't finished before Ding Songyin cut him off. Ding Songyin smiled and said, Senior brother Pan, 1 room between us is enough. This freezing rain came so suddenly, so who knows how many more people will need a room later. If the inn fills up in this bitter cold, we can't very well have them sleeping next to the kitchen stove, can we? For a moment, Pan Yunju was taken aback. It was as if the person before him was not Ding Songyin, but Zheng Zhuxi. Junior brother Ding, you are very considerate. He took out 1 cayan of silver and 30 copper coins and handed it to the waiter. After settling the horses and checking their room, both of them went back downstairs with their packs to order some food and hot wine. Every table in the hall was occupied. Some were traveling merchant caravans, some looked like wealthy men returning home, others were clearly Jianghu martial artists with a number bearing physical anomalies. There were also itinerant entertainers drifting between north and south, who had seized the occasion to ply their trade. Singers, storytellers, acrobats, each occupying a patch of floor, filling the inn with noise and life. Ding Songyin paused to watch for a moment and found himself hearing the legend of the white snake, an adapted version at that, with a new romantic subplot for the green snake and a fictional young man from a wealthy family added in. If you ask me, the green snake should be paired with Fahai or Su Shilin to create any real dramatic tension. Ding Songyan, author of the original story, quipped to himself. He and Pan Yunju found a table with only one other person, exchanged greetings, and sat down. Both wore the Bright Night Sex winter combat attire, one with a sword at hand and the other with a saber, neither concealing their Jianghu identity. The fragrant pan-fried duck in Yujiang Prefecture is very famous. Shall we order some? Pan Yunju played the gracious host. Ding Songyan was happy to follow the host's lead. He had already taken stock of their tablemate, a man of 36 or 37, wearing a square-settled cap and a thick blue padded jacket. He showed no physical anomalies. His chin bore a beard, his eyebrows were thick and heavy, and the outer corners of his eyes drooped slightly. His entire bearing was one of gloom, and he sighed from time to time. While waiting for the food to arrive, Ding Songyan asked his table-mate in a thoughtful tone, "Friend, why all the sighing?" The man glanced at him. "I have troubles of my own." He clearly had no interest in engaging further. Ding Songyan appeared not to notice the hint and said earnestly, "Why not share it? Meeting as strangers is its own kind of fate. One head thinks poorly, two heads think better, and even if our wits are dull, we might still serve as stones from another hill." The man paused, then gave a bitter smile. "It is long past being the matter itself. I am Wu Jiting from Immortal Grotto County." It had been a long time since anyone had listened to him, and gradually he said more and more. By his account, he had grown up in comfortable circumstances with fields and storefronts. He had trained in martial arts from childhood, hoping to pass the orchid examination, Great Zhao's martial examination, and leap at once to a court appointment or a military captaincy. But his talent was insufficient, and his temperament was lacking. Approaching 30, he had not yet entered the great proliferation realm and couldn't even register for the orchid examination. Left with no choice, he had abandoned martial arts for scholarship, turning to Confucian studies in hopes of taking the civil examination. Great Zhao had both martial and civil examinations. The martial was the orchid examination, the civil was the imperial examination, each held every 3 years under normal circumstances. Of course, even a Zhao scholar would have some martial arts foundation, and in any office, whether at the provincial, county, or prefectural level, one of the chief officials had to be exceptional in martial arts and capable of keeping order, while the others had to have passed the civil examination and be skilled in governance. Taking Dingjiang Prefecture, for instance, Magistrate Lin Hansheng was at the Grandmaster realm and could keep the Jianghu in check, while one of his deputy officials had passed the civil examination. He was a little weaker in martial arts, but was no slouch in civil administration. In the previous dynasty, governance had largely been monopolized by the great noble families. When Great Zhao was first founded, the moment of dynastic transition provided the opportunity to establish both the orchid examination and the civil examination. The deep resources of the noble families meant they would still outperform the common people in both martial and civil examinations, but at least it gave those of exceptional talent among ordinary people a chance. Wu Jiting had some aptitude for Confucian studies and managed to progress through the early stages to sit the provincial examination, but at that hurdle he had failed twice in a row. Between the martial training and the scholarship, he had sold off a good deal of his family property. Despondent and weary, he had given up and turned to trade in hopes of making his fortune, only to lose money. Now in the middle of the New Year season, he still had to hurry to the prefectural city to deal with the aftermath. "All I ever wanted was to make something of myself." Wu Jiting had not touched his wine and yet seemed slightly drunk. Ding Songyan listened quietly to the end, took a bite of a cold dish that had just arrived, and shook his head as if he understood. He pondered briefly. "Have you heard, Brother Wu, of the Huangliang dream?" "I have." Wu Jiting looked at Ding Songyan, puzzled. Ding Songyan smiled and said, "In the legend of the Huangliang dream, the Taoist used a celadon pillow, but that's not the truth of it. It was a peachwood pillow. That peachwood pillow was later damaged and split. A piece of it was fashioned into an awakening block, which I was fortunate enough to obtain. It can help a person live through a lifetime of worldly experience in a dream and obtain profound enlightenment. Perhaps it could offer you some clarity, Brother Wu. Would you be willing to try? Wu Jiting immediately turned wary. Is there a price? Not a single coin. Ding Songyan sighed. My own experience a few years ago was a little like yours, Brother Wu. We are kindred souls. Wu Jiting's eyes moved as he thought it over for a good while, then decided to call the waiter bringing the food over as a witness. With someone else present, he put his mind at ease and agreed to try. Cautious, but not cautious enough. No wonder he lost money in trade. Ding Songyan laughed inwardly and rummaged in his pack to produce an awakening block. He had brought it in preparation for returning to his old trade in Immortal Grotto County. If he couldn't turn up any leads, he genuinely planned to spend a few days telling stories in Immortal Grotto County and see if he could draw out anyone who had seen him before. Brother Wu, hold this awakening block. Let drowsiness come over you. You can rest on the table or lie down on a bench. Ding Songyan passed over the awakening block, which was perfectly ordinary on the outside and also very ordinary on the inside. Taking advantage of the moment when he had bent his head to search through his pack, he had already altered his appearance, his anomalies concealed in an instant. Under the curious gazes of several nearby tables, Wu Jiting gripped the awakening block, folded his arms as a pillow, and lay face down on the table. Ding Songyan helped himself to a piece of the fragrant pan-fried duck, then poured a cup of freshly warmed wine for himself, Pan Yunju, and Wu Jiting alike. After counting 10 breaths in silence, he let his right hand fall naturally to the side of his thigh, pressed 2 fingers together into a sword point, and tapped through the air toward Wu Jiting. Wu Jiting toiled in trade for years and lost more of the family property. He simply wound down the business and returned to his studies to sit the civil examination. This time, hard work bore fruit. He passed the provincial examination and earned a place to travel to the capital for the final round. He shouted with joy. In Flame Capital, he passed the examination and every stage sailed smoothly. He rose to become a senior court official and enjoyed wealth and splendor, growing more arrogant with every passing year. Seeing this, his aged father stepped forward and slapped him hard enough to send stars across his vision and blood to his lips. The blow brought him back to his senses. He had never become a court official. He hadn't even sat the examination again. After the business failure, he had taken up medicine, concocted a remedy of his own devising, and upon taking it had fallen into a strange hysteria. To cure his hysteria, his elderly parents had sold off everything they owned. Now the whole family was crammed into a crumbling dwelling with bare walls and nothing before them but a bowl of cold, watery congee. In desperation, his father had struck him hard during a bout of hysteria and inadvertently cured him. Wu Jiting looked at his parents, worn and aged beyond their years, at their clothing filled with patches, and felt the cold wind seeping through the gaps in the crumbling walls. Suddenly, tears streamed down his face as profound understanding struck him. What have I actually been doing all these years? The most precious joy of family was right beside me all along, and I turned a blind eye to it and dragged my aging parents down with me. Weeping without sound, as if he had lived an entire life and witnessed a sorrowful end, Wu Jiting truly woke from the dream. He lifted himself upright and saw the young hero across from him watching with a slight curve at the corner of his mouth. The wine before him had not yet gone cold, and the dishes were not yet all served. Well, Ding Songyan asked with a smile. Wu Jiting's face was streaked with dried tears. He spoke in a low voice. I understand now what is most precious amid the vicissitudes of this world. Once I have settled this business, I will trade no more. I'll tend to the fields and storefronts, get a wife, raise children, and care for my parents. He rose to his feet, held the awakening block in both hands, and bowed solemnly. Thank you, young hero, for waking me. Ding Songyan took back the awakening block and said with a smile, Think nothing of it. Your profound awakening is the finest thanks I could ask for, Brother Wu. Wu Jiting let out a long breath and bowed again. Then I'll return to my room and make preparations for what lies ahead. He turned and walked toward the stairs with a remarkably light step, as if a great weight had been lifted from him. Pan Yunju glanced at the awakening block in Ding Songyan's hand. He hadn't expected his junior brother to have such a remarkable object. No wonder his comprehension is so extraordinary. Once Ding Songyan had put the awakening block away, Pan Yunju asked quietly, Has this Wu Jiting truly had his Huangliang dream and received a profound enlightenment? For now, yes. What comes after is another matter, Ding Songyan said with a smile. Haven't you heard the saying, Senior Brother Pan? The other shore is hard to reach, and a gambling habit is hard to break. I haven't. Pan Yunju suspected his junior brother had just made it up on the spot. Ding Songyan considered for a moment and said, "An enlightenment lasts a moment, keeping to it lasts a lifetime." Throughout history, there have always been those who achieved profound enlightenment through some single experience and withdrew from the mundane world of dust, only to become entangled again in something of the same kind years or decades later and return to it. Arising, abiding, decaying, and emptiness. This is what the cycle of things has always been. For us martial artists, in the cultivation of our hearts and minds, we must still wipe and polish at all times, lest the dust settles. Those who can say originally there is not a single thing, where does dust alight, are always in the minority. And besides, what one understands now is not necessarily entirely correct. There may be new profound awakenings still to come. That is why even a sage only dares speak of free and easy wandering, and not of transcendence. Pan Yunju was moved by these words and fell into earnest reflection. Just then, a middle-aged man from the merchant caravan at the nearby tables rose and came over, smiling as he addressed Ding Songyan. "Young hero, is that awakening block for sale? My employer is willing to pay a fine price." Ding Songyan waved his hand at once. "Not for sale. If I sold it, wouldn't that make me a fraud? And Wu Jiting would be branded my accomplice." The middle-aged man tried to persuade him, but upon seeing Ding Songyan's firm refusal, he had no choice but to return and report back. Pan Yunju glanced toward those tables and said after a moment's thought, "Junior brother Ding, even if you wanted to help Wu Jiting, you shouldn't have done it in public like this. Once others learn of a treasure, the trouble it brings has no end." Ding Songyan glanced at Pan Yunju and said in a lowered voice, "Otherwise, who would I test my sword on?" Pan Yunju was stunned. After quite a long moment, he said, "But what if you run into a powerhouse you can't handle?" Ding Songyan said with an amused laugh, "Then I'd just hand it over. It's worth a few coins at most. Why die for it?" Pan Yunju was stunned for a moment, watching Ding Songyan, opening and closing his mouth without ever finding the words. He felt that his junior brother was being far too cavalier about it. If they truly encountered a powerful figure with designs on the Huangliang awakening block, the other party might take the item and still kill them afterwards. When seeking out unorthodox practitioners to test one's sword against, it was best to select the target in advance and ensure their strength fell within a manageable range. Luring in bandits with a treasure was another matter entirely. Who could say who might show up? What if it turned out to be a form-transfigured third-rank powerhouse, or even a Dharma Realm Grandmaster? Ding Songyan let his left hand fall naturally, reached into his pack, and pressed a finger against the awakening block. Senior Brother Pan had made him realize that his treasure shouldn't be too fake. Although its authenticity could always be explained away by saying that divine relics concealed their own brilliance, leaving a measure of the genuine article within them might prove useful elsewhere as well. It might come in handy someday, just as he had used the manifesting the way, and its virtue, sword intent to turn falsehood into reality and undermine Chen Jindong's confidence. With a touch of his finger, the dream's sword intent slipped silently into the awakening block. The awakening block quietly took on a dreamlike, illusory quality. Now he could throw it out to lure in enemies and divert their attention, and if a powerful foe seized it, he could covertly activate the sword intent from within to disturb their mind and create an opening. Once that was done, Ding Songyan used the cover of bowing his head to drink and visualized flame heart at his ancestral aperture, sending candle flame true qi cycling through his body and concealing the double pupil anomaly in his eyes. He ate with easy contentment, while Pan Yunju grew more and more anxious, dreading that tonight would end in bloodshed. This seasoned Jianghu martial artist kept glancing around him, trying to sort the virtuous from the wicked among the furtive, as well as unabashedly open looks directed their way. They were at a post station, not inside a city. Neither the station master, the soldiers, nor the inn's proprietor or waiters could possibly memorize so many wanted posters and portraits, let alone spare anyone to do the cross-referencing. As long as their distinguishing features were not too conspicuous, or they hadn't recently committed some major crime in the surrounding area, Unorthodox practitioners could actually stay at post stations without much fear. By the time the post station submitted the guest register as required, and the county or prefectural office found a match against the wanted notices, several days would have passed, and the relevant unorthodox practitioner would long since have vanished without a trace. Who knew how many heretics and evildoers were lurking in this very inn? And some of those merchant caravans, out in the wilderness where there was no one to watch over them, were known to moonlight as bandits. Having had his fill of food and drink, Ding Songyan ambled back up to their corner room on the second floor. He glanced at the bed. Manageable. We can make do by squeezing. I'll push the benches together. Just give me one of the quilts. Pan Yunju had even considered sitting in a chair and sleeping with his saber in his arms. That way, if there was an attack, he could respond without delay. Ding Songyan had no objection. Why share a bed with a rough fellow when he didn't have to? Traveling with senior sister was much better. At least she was nice to look at. He gave Pan Yunju one of the quilts, washed up quickly, and lay down. Pan Yunju paced back and forth for a while, then settled into a chair with his saber in his arms and a quilt pulled over himself. The freezing rain had stopped outside, leaving only the howl of a cold wind as the night deepened. By the fourth watch, Pan Yunju's breathing had grown slow and even. Ding Songyan had already been fast asleep for some time. Some time later, the door swung open without a sound, and a figure slipped inside. The figure stood nearly 1.9 meters tall, with a large, prominent nose and a face that bore a certain resemblance to a rooster. The backs of his hands and the sides of his neck were covered in patches of reddish-brown feathers. He was in his 30s, carrying a pair of golden melon hammers. He quickly shut the wooden door, keeping the cold wind out and the two sleepers undisturbed. Finding the room still silent, all sound swallowed by the night, the intruder closed the distance to the bed in a few swift steps, raised his right hand, and brought a hammer swinging down toward Ding Songyan's head. Ding! A flash of cold light deflected the golden melon sleeve hammer with a light, precise tap. Ding Songyan had already rolled out of bed and drawn his sword. The intruder showed no panic. He spread his arms wide and smashed the two golden melon hammers at Ding Songyan in alternating blows like a storm. Each strike churned the air and shook the surrounding space, carrying both tremendous force and a sense of something quietly building. Ding Songyan countered with a sword of quick, precise touches, moving like a phantom through the narrow space between the bed and the square table, blocking or sidestepping every hammer blow. But the intruder was in no hurry whatsoever. This swift, relentless exchange lasted no more than 10 or so breaths before the intruder abruptly paused. He raised both hammers overhead, and the turbulent currents that had been stirring through the air converged. Without a sound, the two golden melon hammers came crashing down. It was like a great flood finally shattering a dam and pouring through. The force was staggering. This blow carried the might of a grandmaster. The intruder was a deserter from the great Zhao military, and he cultivated the accumulating water divine art recorded in the accumulating water scripture. It allowed him to gather both the strength of allies and his own momentum. After a sustained assault, as his energy crested to its peak, he could draw on the force that had been accumulating in the surrounding space and unleash a blow that transcended his realm. He had recently reached the perfected Great Proliferation realm, so this strike carried a measure of Dharma realm grandeur. The final form of the accumulating water divine art, fathomless depths. The two golden melon hammers bore down on Ding Songyan with crushing weight, sealing off every inch of the narrow space. Ding Songyan suddenly brought Frostjade across at an angle and blocked from above. The three collided, yet the two hammers at the peak of their terrible force froze in midair, as if the crystal-clear longsword had absorbed every ounce of their power and momentum. Frostjade gave a gentle tremble, then erupted with terrifying force, sending both hammers flying back. This, too, carried a measure of a grandmaster might, a technique of the celestial stars' sword art, stars turn, constellations shift. It was both a deflecting defensive form and the opening of a counterattack. With a ringing note, the crystalline, dreamlike Frostjade shot toward the enemy, fast as a shooting star streaking across the sky. Caught off guard, the intruder barely managed to evade. Ding Songyan pressed forward, each thrust faster than the last, pinning him in place with the force of a gale. He could barely move his feet, only capable of swinging his two golden melon hammers to guard the foot of space in front of him. The clanging rang without pause, and sparks scattered through the air like wisps of candle flames flickering in the dark. Just as the intruder began building toward fathomless depths again, a flash of cold light threaded through all those scattered sparks and lit up the space between the bed and the table. The sword light surged forth, vast and majestic, its momentum complete. The intruder's gaze hardened. He drove one hammer high and swept the other low, pulling at the dark surrounding space and drawing the abyssal force onto himself, then crashed both down in a heavy but swift pincer against Ding Songyan's kindling passes to candle. Frostshade moved faster than the intruder could have imagined. It threaded between the two converging hammers and touched the intruder's throat before they could close. A sword strike approaching the Dharma realm. The intruder's heartbeat faltered. His throat went ice cold, then erupted in searing pain. His two hammers, already scored with sword marks, crashed together with a thud. Frostshade had already shifted sideways, slicing through his throat and widening the wound even as it withdrew from the blow. The intruder stumbled and fell backward. Yet he wasn't dead, and in falling, he put distance between himself and the crystalline ice sword. His throat muscles worked to close the wound, and his true chi surged to the site in an attempt to slow the gush of blood. He had no thought for anything else. He dropped one hammer, rolled with the momentum, and made for the wall, intending to smash through the window and flee. Then another clear, ice-cold flash of sword light appeared before him. The intruder planted a hand on the floor and drove with his back and core, springing hard into the air. A heartbeat later, the same clear, ice-cold sword light appeared in his vision again, descending from above. No. He twisted frantically in midair, only to find that same clear, ice-cold sword light waiting ahead of him. Before him and behind, left and right, above and below, the sword light seemed to be everywhere. Thud. Frostshade sank into the center of his brow. Eyes wide with disbelief, the intruder crashed to the floor, his life fading fast. The embryonic form of 6 directions as one still has plenty of flaws. This only worked because the man panicked, and all he wanted was to escape. If he had thrown a casual punch or hammer strike, he would have found the sword light was nothing but an empty framework and could have been blocked easily. Ding Songyan withdrew Frostshade and muttered to himself. Crimson drops pooled along the crystal blade, dripping down one by one onto the assailant's body. The intruder's fading gaze drifted to Pan Yunju, asleep in the chair. A strange thought surfaced in his rapidly darkening mind. We fought so fiercely. Why did he never wake? Carrying that question with him, the intruder's neck went slack and his head lolled to the side. He was fully dead. Ding Songyan ran a quick review of the fight in his mind, then wasted no time and turned to spirit channeling. He looked at the trembling, rooster-faced ghost. "What is your name, and what is the bounty on your head?" "Tangdu, with a bounty of 19,000 taels," the ghost answered truthfully. "My, that's nearly double the bounty on the leader of the 3 villains of Zio City, whatever his name was. So this is a genuine third-rank form transfigured." Ding Songyan's interest was immediately piqued. "What did you do to end up on a wanted notice?" "I was originally a military commander. The capsized vessel school recruited me to attempt a mutiny with the troops under my command. It failed, and I fled the barracks and have been hiding ever since." Tangdu's ghost was drenched in blood. The capsized vessel sect, my great benefactor. Even their name practically advertises them as specialists in overturning regimes. Small wonder they are counted among the lower 12 of the 21 heretical ways. Ding Songyan looked at the ghost, deep in thought, and asked, "You cultivated the accumulating water scripture and reached the perfected great proliferation realm." His physical anomalies bore a strong resemblance to County Marshal Zhang Pinglin of Kisong Prefecture. The lineage behind the accumulating water scripture most likely traced back to Fuxi, the human-faced rooster. The Fuxi was shaped like a rooster but had a human face, and its cry was its own name, the result of consuming it. One became fond of fighting, skilled in warfare, and adept at gathering the strength of many. I had been cultivating the accumulating waters scripture, but had not reached perfection. After deserting, I had neither the techniques for further viscera installation nor a reliable physician to perform it and forge new apertures. I made no progress at all. That was until 2 months ago, when the capsized vessel school promised to pass me their gathered waters capsizing art. That divine art subsumes the accumulating waters scripture, and through it they helped me complete my final viscera installation. They told me to travel to Flame Capital before the year is out, after which they would teach me the full art. Tang Du's remnant soul trembled as it spoke. What did they want you to do in Flame Capital? Ding Songyin pressed. His cultivation art came from the imperial military, so his physical anomalies would genuinely be easy to overlook. Tang Du's remnant soul shook his head. I don't know. Ding Songyin rubbed his chin with his left hand and thought for a moment. Where is the wealth you've accumulated over these years? He had been so focused on testing the 6 directions as one technique that he hadn't managed to hold back and trap the man in a dream state. And ill-gotten gains could still be put to good use. Tang Du's remnant soul trembled like chaff in a sieve. I handed it over to the capsized vessel school as payment toward the viscera installation. Being a heretic is that rough. No loyalty at all. I didn't pay a single copper coin for my aperture forging and viscera installation at the Bright Night sect. Ding Songyin muttered to himself, thoroughly disappointed. Ding Songyin looked at Tang Du's remnant soul and asked in a resigned tone, Why did you try to kill me? It was obviously because of the counterfeit Huangliang awakening block, but the question still needed asking. After all, what if there was some other purpose behind it? Tang Du's remnant soul answered with a trembling voice. I wanted that awakening block. I still have hopes of entering the Dharma realm, and if I could live through an entire lifetime in a dream, it might help me refine my heart and mind. And I get particularly excited at the thought of a fight to the death. Such a love of fighting. Ding Songyin asked a few more questions and confirmed that this man was a fish he had lured in himself, not bait sent by someone else. He thought for a moment, then engaged Tang Du's remnant soul in a conversation about martial arts with considerable interest. Those near Dharma realm hammer blows of yours must have come from gathering the strength of many. It can gather the strength of nearby comrades as well as the accumulated force of your own past strikes. Broadening his exposure to countless martial arts schools, then bringing all things into unity and manifesting the way and its virtue to synthesize, and recombine what he learned into a grand unified model of martial arts of his own creation, was one of the few paths by which Ding Songyin felt he could surpass Jai Hani in thinking, ideas, and practice. From the fight just now, he had gained some understanding of Tang Du's accumulating water divine art, but having only witnessed it for such a short time, and without the experience of his mind being directly struck by it, many of the details remained unclear. Tang Du's remnant soul answered Ding Songyin's questions honestly. According to him, a martial artist who cultivated the accumulating water divine art would, upon reaching the great proliferation realm, gradually develop a connection to the surrounding void, as if they were standing at the center of a pond. Once he activated fathomless depths, a portion of the true chi and force from each hammer blow would overflow and accumulate in that surrounding void pond. When the pond had gathered enough to become an abyss, it would shatter the dam and pour out, producing a strike approaching the Dharma realm. The one problem was that if the accumulated force was left unused or exceeded its time limit, it would backlash against him. Gathering the strength of comrades was also achieved through the void pond. When practitioners of this art were within 4 meters of one another, all their ponds would connect to form a vast abyss sea, which would ultimately be channeled outward by whoever stood at the front or led the charge. Since the Heaven-Earth severance, there were limits to human power. Even a supreme master would find an army wielding this art extremely troublesome. You can begin to make use of the surrounding void as early as the Great Proliferation realm. This art is quite interesting. Ding Songyin listened with keen attention. Manipulating the surrounding void was one of the defining traits of the Dharma realm. The accumulating water divine arts approach was narrow and crude, but it was still remarkable. A typical Great Proliferation realm martial artist could barely project true chi enough to deflect rain, generate a bit of sword or saber radiance, or produce some flames and miasma. Kindling passes to candle of the 7 swords of candlelit night was a technique of fast swords building momentum before breaking the enemy. It was superficially similar to fathomless depths, but the underlying principles were different. Its momentum building came from 2 sources. First, using oneself as a vessel, coordinating apertures and true chi with each technique to accumulate force drop by drop. Second, using the rapid clashes with an opponent to transform true chi into sparks that scattered through the air and briefly lingered, then threading them all together with a single sword stroke before they dissipated, igniting them against one another to multiply the technique's power. For this reason, the opening portion of kindling passes to candle had to be fast. Too slow, and the candle flame would extinguish one by one before momentum could build. Moreover, driving the technique with candle flame true chi was at least 10% more effective than using myriad star true chi. Ding Songyan eagerly asked Tang Do what specific techniques' fathomless depths involved, which apertures it employed, how the true chi circulated, and how those corresponding apertures had originally been refined. In his view, there was a real possibility of integrating this technique with kindling passes to candle. At worst, it could make kindling passes to candle considerably more potent. His short-term goal was to rely on the Chaos Realm he already possessed. Since the Chaos Realm placed extremely strong constraints on the outward release of true chi, he could incorporate the techniques of fathomless depths and similar moves into kindling passes to candle, thereby greatly increasing its power. His medium-term goal was to derive the apertures from fathomless depths that involved making use of the void, and put them to use with candle flame true chi, leveraging the fact that presence-absence myriad forms chi could coexist with candle flame true chi. This would allow Zheng Zhuxi, having mastered the lesser limitless art, to transform the surrounding void into a pond or a prairie at the Great Proliferation Realm, accumulating spark after spark without worrying that the overflowing true chi would quickly dissipate. With that, kindling passes to candle could evolve into a man-made flood. A single spark could set the prairie ablaze. This improvement would certainly not come easily. The apertures from fathomless depths that pertain to void manipulation would inevitably overlap with some of the apertures refined through the candlelit nocturne chart and the celestial stars chart. Using both at the same time would create conflicts or even result in clashing true chi and chi deviation. He would have to feel his way forward carefully, eliminating the less critical overlapping apertures, and for those that couldn't be eliminated, improve their refinement and rerouting the true chi pathways so they wouldn't produce obvious conflicts with the corresponding apertures of the candle-lit nocturne chart and the celestial stars chart. It would be useful for a time, at least. This would inevitably diminish the effectiveness of fathomless depths, but once integrated into kindling passes to candle, the combined power would still be formidable. As a medium-term goal, Ding Songyan felt the integration would take at least 6 months to a year before it could succeed. The long-term goal was more complicated still. What Ding Songyan had in mind was adding a set of supplementary apertures beyond those refined by the celestial stars chart and the candle-lit nocturne chart. These apertures would play no role in advancing his realm and would not interfere with regular cultivation, but would activate the moment kindling passes to candle was used and produce an effect similar to fathomless depths. Whether such an improvement was even achievable, Ding Songyan himself wasn't sure. It depended on exactly which apertures from fathomless depths were involved in the void manipulation, how severe their conflict with the celestial stars chart and the candle-lit nocturne chart actually was, and whether simply rerouting the true chi pathways could produce some degree of integration. If it could be achieved, Ding Songyan didn't dare imagine how magnificent pairing the Northern Dipper sword formation, the Celestial Guardian sword formation, or the completed Celestial Stars formation, with a kindling passes to candle imbued with the special properties of fathomless depths would look. If it didn't work out, he would have to consider having everyone in the Bright Knight sect cultivate the lesser limitless art, but then calling it the Bright Knight sect would be a bit of a misnomer. Eyes burning with that desire, Ding Songyan listened intently as Tang Du's remnant soul described the techniques of fathomless depths and the various apertures it involved. The soul had barely spoken 7 or 8 sentences before it let out a wailing shriek and rapidly dissolved away under banishing demons and warding off evil. "Don't go!" Ding Songyan instinctively reached out his left hand, trying to pull Tang Du's remnant soul back, but it was already too late. He let out a sigh, both frustrated and helpless, right when it was getting to the important part. Sigh, this trait of mine that radiates but can't be reined in really is a problem. Ding Songyan was forced to think about how he might obtain the accumulating water divine art later. Otherwise, all those ideas he had just worked out would come to nothing. This is a military art. I wonder if I could get a look at the accumulating waters scripture through Xing Chang. I'm not asking for the aperture forging or viscera installation techniques, just a chance to look over the fathomless depths technique and its corresponding aperture refinement methods. There should be a way, right? I've only mastered the Northern Dipper sword formation so far. I haven't yet learned the Celestial Guardian sword formation. As a higher-level sword formation, would it have its own force-gathering techniques? Mind churning with these thoughts, Ding Songyan slid Frostshade, now completely clean without a drop of blood remaining, back into its scabbard. In the narrow space between the bed and the table, the surrounding air shifted strangely, as if invisible barriers were rapidly dissolving. A few breaths later, Pan Yunju, asleep in his chair with his saber in his arms, twitched his nose. Blood. He snapped awake instantly. When he opened his eyes, he saw Ding Songyan standing with his sword to one side, a corpse on the floor. The fatal wounds were in the throat and between the brows, and blood had pooled across the floor. What? Pan Yunju rose to his feet in shock. He could tell that the body had been dead for some time. Junior brother Ding had not only killed the attacker, but he has already finished the spirit channeling as well. How did I not notice a single thing? Ding Songyan turned his head. This man came in the night to take my awakening block. I killed him. Before Pan Yunju could respond, he smiled. Senior brother Pan, you know I have important business in Yujiang Prefecture and can't afford to draw attention to myself. When you report to the station master in a moment, please tell him that you were the one who killed this man. The wound between his brows is where I finished him off. Just say it's from your saber. I'll split some of the bounty with you. Pan Yunju walked over to the corpse and studied the dead man's features carefully. Distinct physical anomalies. Looks like someone who cultivated the accumulating water divine art. He was probably 4th rank mortal surpassed. If I pushed myself hard and had some assistance, I could have killed him. It wouldn't raise suspicion. Junior brother Ding really does have strength on par with a 4th rank mortal surpassed. No wonder he wins whenever we spar. His cultivation realm may be low, but he's a prodigy in the martial path with extraordinary insight. Pan Yunju thought for a moment, then looked up at Ding Songyan. Okay. He drew his saber at once, set it against Tang Du's neck, and severed the assailant's head along the line of the sword wound Ding Songyan had made. At the same time, an image was already forming in his mind of how his junior brother had killed the man. The moment the assailant reached the bedside, junior brother Ding had struck without warning, driving his sword through the man's throat. Once the assailant fell, he finished him off with a thrust between the brows. Pan Yunju felt that only this kind of swift ambush consisting of only 2 or 3 moves to end the fight could explain why he hadn't noticed a thing. And only that was consistent with how he assessed his junior brother's strength. Otherwise, wouldn't junior brother Ding be as powerful as junior sister Zhang? His cultivation realm was still lower than hers. He called himself Tangdu, Ding Songyan informed his senior brother as he stepped out to summon the waiter and the post-station soldiers. The commotion woke the people in the surrounding rooms. Some stepped out to see what was happening. Others cracked their wooden doors open a sliver. Before long, the station master, whose face bore a certain resemblance to a goat, entered the room with several soldiers. He produced a crumpled wanted notice dug up from some corner, crouched beside the corpse, and compared them carefully for a while before looking up at Pan Yunju. It's definitely Tangdu. Originally a military traitor, he committed a violent crime last month. He's believed to have reached the perfected Great Proliferation realm, 3rd rank form transfigured. Bounty of 19,000 taels. Young hero Pan, you killed him. Excellent saber technique. The station master's gaze toward Pan Yunju had quietly changed, now carrying unmistakable awe. Believed to have reached the perfected Great Proliferation realm, 3rd rank form transfigured. A bounty of 19,000 taels. I killed him. Pan Yunju stood frozen. He instinctively turned his head to look beside him. He found his junior brother smiling at him with a perfectly innocent expression. Junior brother Ding killed a perfected Great Proliferation realm, 3rd rank form transfigured powerhouse. He killed someone of that caliber with just a few sword strokes. Even with a surprise attack, that is far too extraordinary. Surely they hadn't fought a fierce battle in the room, with junior brother Ding even finishing the spirit channeling, while I noticed absolutely nothing. Or perhaps that was exactly what happened. Junior brother Ding is closing in on junior sister Zheng's current level, his strength on par with a third-rank form transfigured. He is only at the early Great Proliferation realm. How formidable would he be when he reaches the middle and late stages? If he reaches the perfected Great Proliferation realm, wouldn't he be equivalent to a grandmaster who has just entered the Dharma realm? Pan Yunju's thoughts churned like boiling water, speculations rising one after another. And no matter which possibility he considered, all of them pointed to a conclusion that left him deeply shaken. Seeing the station master staring at him, Pan Yunju remembered that he had already promised his junior brother to take responsibility for this, and forced out a smile. He was overconfident. He didn't realize we hadn't slept at all and were only pretending to, so I suddenly sprang at him and sliced his throat. Pan Yunju talked and talked, producing reason after reason, yet found he couldn't bring himself to say outright, "Yes, I killed him." All at once, a thought struck him. When I killed the Zioyang, junior brother Ding was nearby. Had that also involved his secret assistance? And when junior sister Zheng killed the accumulated evil Wei demon, killed Zai Zian, killed Heluo, and killed the second of the three villains of Zio City, junior brother Ding had been with her every time. Even if he hadn't struck directly, the distance between them would never have exceeded 20 meters. Had he been involved in those two? No. He lost badly every time he sparred with junior sister Zhang. She truly did have the ability to kill a fourth-rank mortal surpassed martial artist. After installing the vermilion bird viscera, she is also capable of holding her own against a third-rank form transfigured powerhouse. By the time she reaches the late Great Proliferation realm, she might well make it onto the Orchid Fresh list. The Bright Knight Sect's current generation has actually produced two extraordinary talents. Were it not for the limitations of its cultivation arts, it might well become a top-tier power in the future. The station master, seeing Pan Yunju's detailed account with Tang Du's corpse right there in front of him, harbored not the slightest suspicion. He rose to his feet. "This is a major criminal. The bounty is too large for Immortal Grotto County to pay out. You'll need to go to the prefectural city at least. Gentlemen, I'll send 2 post-station soldiers to accompany you to Huicheng County tomorrow." Under normal circumstances, Pan Yunju and Ding Songyan could simply bring Tang Du's head to the prefectural city and collect the bounty. But the incident had taken place at a post station, and as the official in charge, the station master naturally had to send an escort, prepare documentation, and submit a formal account. "Fine," Ding Songyan answered before Pan Yunju could, sparing his senior brother from having to glance over at him for approval in a way that would needlessly raise suspicion. Senior sister Zheng could do that, and no one would think anything of it. She was known for being fair and respectful of her junior siblings' opinions, but Pan Yunju had no such reputation. Turning to his junior brother too often would give people the impression of someone seeking instructions. Aren't we supposed to hurry to Immortal Grotto County and get back quickly? Pan Yunju was bewildered, but kept it off his face. He went along with it. The station master crouched back down and searched the corpse, turning up more than 20 taels of silver, several dozen copper coins, and a set of throwing knives. "Young hero Pan, young hero Ding, these are yours." The station master had mainly been looking for any letters. Ding Songyan smiled and said, "We'll be troubling you and your 2 men again tomorrow. In this bitter cold, please accept this as our treat for everyone to have a warm bowl of soup. Don't refuse, we'll be collecting a generous bounty after all." Indeed, Pan Yunju hadn't expected his junior brother to be more practiced at this sort of thing than he was. The station master beside the corpse and the soldiers at the door first registered surprise, then offered their praise in turn. "Most generous, the both of you. Truly noble." Seeing that everyone was pleased, Ding Songyan then said with a smile, "Tang Du said something just before he died. Capsized vessel school." Heading to Flame Capital. Being in Yujiang Prefecture and close to Immortal Grotto County, Ding Songyan had no wish to reveal that he was capable of spirit channeling, yet he felt it necessary to pass the information along. Capsized vessel school, Flame Capital. The station master suspected nothing, only murmuring. According to the wanted notice, Tang Du did have ties to the capsized vessel school. But why would he say that before he died? Perhaps when a man is about to die, his words turn to good, Ding Songyan said earnestly. The station master and the soldiers asked nothing more, left Tang Du's head behind, carried the body away, and had the inn's servants set about washing the floor and the room. With no empty room to retreat to and the room being cleaned, Ding Songyan stepped into the corridor. He acknowledged the gazes coming from every direction with a smile, then stood beside Pan Yunju with an air of unmistakable pride, as if declaring to all, "My senior brother Pan is invincible in the world." Wu Jiting from the Huangliang dream had also been roused by the commotion and had learned what happened. He came over now, his expression guilt-ridden, and said to Ding Songyan, "Young hero Ding, it is because of me that your treasure was exposed and you faced this ordeal." Ordeal. Senior brother Pan and I stand to collect a bounty of 19,000 taels. We can go claim it at the prefectural city tomorrow. Ding Songyan said this deliberately, not lowering his voice, so that the guests in the surrounding rooms could all hear. He smiled and continued, "We dared to bring out the Huangliang awakening block because we are confident in our own strength." Only then did Wu Jiting let out a breath of relief, no longer feeling that he owed young hero Ding a debt. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Ding Songyan and Pan Yunju went back in and shut the wooden door once the room had been tidied up. Pan Yunju looked at his junior brother, lips moving for a moment before he spoke. "The night is still deep. Why don't we rest a while longer? Take the bed, senior brother Pan. I'll review the earlier fight." Ding Songyan smiled in approval. Senior sister respected others' secrets and didn't pry. Senior brother Pan knew what to ask and what to leave alone. Pan Yunju gave a quiet nod and lay down on the bed without asking a single question, as if Tang Du truly had been killed by his own hand. Ding Songyan turned his mind carefully to every detail the accumulating water divine art and fathomless depths had displayed in the fight. The next morning, the skies gradually cleared. Everyone at the inn knew that Ding Songyan and Pan Yunju were heading to the prefectural city with Tang Du's head to collect the bounty. About a quarter of an hour along the road toward Huicheng County, when the other travelers of varying paces had all disappeared from sight, Ding Songyan, now dressed as a scholar and wearing a carefree wanderer cap, reined in his horse and said to the two post-station soldiers with a smile, "Brothers, after much consideration, I feel I can't let the matter in Immortal Grotto County wait any longer. It's nothing big. I can handle it on my own. Please accompany senior brother Pan to the prefectural city. I only assisted and threw in a stroke. My presence makes no difference either way." The two post-station soldiers, who had pocketed the soup money, nodded agreeably and agreed. Ding Songyan brought his horse alongside Pan Yunju and said softly, "Senior brother Pan, once you've collected the bounty, find a sect disciple or steward at the Honkson Trading Company to escort you to Immortal Grotto County. No rush, just arrive before dark. We'll meet in front of the county office." "So junior brother Ding wants to conceal his whereabouts?" Pan Yunju nodded solemnly. Citing his superior movement technique, Ding Songyan left his horse and pack with Pan Yunju, taking only Frostshade and his personal items. He activated Waxing Moon Phantom form and departed, keeping to the woodland alongside the road the whole way to avoid any watching eyes. Just over an hour later, he arrived at G Family Village, located several miles outside Immortal Grotto County's city walls. It was close to noon, and the languid warmth of the winter sun spilled over the high stone and timber walls encircling the village. Bearing no physical anomalies, Ding Songyan was not subjected to much scrutiny when he entered, but outsiders were rare in the countryside, and the gate soldiers still had him register his origin and name. Ding Songyan picked up the brush and wrote with a flourish, "Bright Night Sect, Pan Yunju." If his disreputable companion hadn't already become a grandmaster with a considerable reputation, Ding Songyan figured he would have written True Spirit Sect, Ren Yaoyang. Inside the village, he looked around, walked to an old willow tree, pulled up the hem of his robe, and sat down casually at its roots. Sword across his knees, Ding Songyan watched the comings and goings of the village with a smile. This demeanor, combined with his position at the village's main thoroughfare, quickly made him the center of attention. Everyone who passed by cast at least a glance his way. Ding Songyan met their looks with perfect ease and waited. The cold winter sun climbed higher and higher until it stood at the center of the sky, and a middle-aged man in a dark red short jacket came walking along the village path. He glanced at Ding Songyan in passing, then his gaze suddenly froze. His expression shifted slightly. He turned stiffly and walked back the way he had come, heading quickly deeper into the village. Watching this, the corner of Ding Songyan's mouth slowly curved upward. He gripped Frostshade, rose to his feet, dusted off his robe, and followed, moving at a pace that looked unhurried but was in fact swift. The man hurried back to his mud-walled home and was about to pull the gate shut when a sheathed longsword slipped through the gap and held it open. "Have you nothing to say?" Ding Songyan smiled pleasantly from outside the gate. The man's expression turned thoroughly nasty. "You already left. Why did you come back? Some things need to be settled." Ding Songyan had no intention of letting the man realize he remembered nothing at all and played the riddle with practiced ease. "That has nothing to do with me. You're the one who agreed to go and tell stories for old Jiang." The man grew agitated. Storytelling again. In this world, is storytelling a high-risk profession? Ding Songyan muttered to himself, then chose his words carefully. "I'm a storyteller. I go where the money is. I trusted you, which is why I was caught off guard." The man immediately swore an oath. "Heaven above, I 7th G had no idea old Jiang was a rotten egg. I only found out what he was plotting after I overheard him later. If I speak a single false word, let me bleed from all 7 orifices and die." 7th G then looked at Ding Songyan with an ingratiating smile. "You're fine, aren't you? He's the one who died. Old Jiang is dead." Ding Songyan looked at 7th G and said thoughtfully, "As you know, I was in a daze for some time afterward. I'm not entirely clear on how old Jiang died or why no constables ever came for me. Do you have any idea?" 7th G shot Ding Songyan a wary, hunched look. "I don't know what happened either. All I know is that one of you went into a stupor and the other died. Old Jiang had no family and no one knew where he came from. The authorities didn't even know he existed, so I quietly buried him. What did you overhear at the time?" Ding Songyan had deliberately circled around before asking this. 7th G swallowed. He wanted to swap into a younger body. At that, 7th G's eyes suddenly went blank and his body began to tremble. You wouldn't happen to be old Jiang, would you?" "What the?" Hearing 7th G's words, nothing but profanities came flooding into Ding Songyan's mind. Having read hundreds of web novels, he immediately made certain connections. Old Jiang couldn't have been trying to seize a new body, could he? Does this world have a martial art or some form of sorcery that allows body-seizing rebirth? Damn it. Could it be that old Jiang had attempted to possess Ding Songyan's body, causing the death of Ding Songyan's soul, which satisfied the condition of sharing the same name dying at the same time that triggered my transmigration? And then, just as I arrived in this world's underworld and was about to borrow the body, old Jiang completed the possession, leaving me without a target and forced to wander the realm of the dead. The one Jai Hanni later killed wasn't Ding Songyan but old Jiang. And once the body was emptied, I was finally able to return to it. But according to 7th G and the results of the sex investigation, after old Jiang died, Ding Songyan spent some time in a stupor before slowly recovering, becoming timid and withdrawn, and showing no remarkable traits afterward, while still retaining the basic ability to tell stories. My transmigration created a conflict, causing old Jiang's body-seizing rebirth to fail partway through, while his own soul suffered severe damage in the process. Ding Songyan chuckled and looked at 7th G. "If I were old Jiang, why would I come back to G Family Village? Wouldn't I be worried that you'd already reported it and the authorities would be waiting to arrest me?" Not giving 7th G time to think, he continued. "You said old Jiang had no family. When did he come to G Family Village?" 4 or 5 years ago. He said he fled a locust plague in the north and settled in that mountain hollow over there, cleared a few hundred square meters of land and built 2 mud huts. He used to go up the mountain to gather herbs and prospect for ore. He spent rather freely, 7th G answered honestly. G Family Village lay west of Immortal Grotto Mountain, south of Heavenly Lake. Ding Songyan thought for a moment. "Where did you bury old Jiang? I may have left something on him." "I was in such a daze at the time that I don't remember anything else. Buried right there in the hollow where he lived." 7th G glanced at Ding Songyan. "I searched old Jiang's body, nothing of yours. Really nothing." Ding Songyan took out the Huangliang Awakening block. "Think again, it's something like this. Really nothing." 7th G was emphatic. His gaze was drawn to the Huangliang Awakening block with its faint dreamlike quality. "Have a closer look. Hold it." Ding Songyan pressed the Huangliang Awakening block into his hand. "Really not there? Then take me to old Jiang's hollow and we'll have a look. Maybe he hid it in some corner. Hold on to it for now and give it back when we get there. Who knows, it might jog your memory." 7th G took hold of the Huangliang awakening block and hesitated. All right, let's go now. Maybe old Jiang buried it there. Once it gets dark, that hollow is a creepy place. Ding Songyin glanced at the sky. It's only noon. No hurry. Knowing old Jiang is dead puts my mind at ease. I rushed over the first thing this morning without eating a single grain of rice. I can't skip lunch too, right? Would you like some? I'll go get us something to eat. 7th G turned the Huangliang awakening block over in his hands, thinking it over. A few baozi to fill the stomach will do. The trip there and back will take a while. In Yujiang Prefecture, baozi were still called baozi. Unlike in Ning Province, where there were only mantu, the plain ones called white mantu and the filled ones called filled mantu of various kinds. Will do, Ding Songyin agreed readily. Ji Family Village was close enough to the county city that it had no inn, but herb gatherers, ore prospectors, and hunters stopped here regularly, supporting 2 taverns and a baozi stall. Ding Songyin approached the unsigned baozi stall, his eyes carrying that hidden candle and starlight warmth as he addressed the old woman inside. 20 assorted baozi. Give me mostly meat. The wrinkle-faced old woman pulled out a paper bag with a pleased smile and began loading in the baozi. While he waited, Ding Songyin made small talk. I haven't been to Ji Family Village in 2 years. Seems there are more strangers around than before. Who told you that? Same people as always. The old woman pushed back. Ding Songyin smiled and went along with it. Maybe it's just that I've been away too long and my memory is hazy. You know 7th G, a friend of mine. He's changed quite a bit, almost unrecognizable from 2 years ago. Ah, that you wouldn't know. The old woman suddenly lowered her voice and glanced around. Last year, no, the year before winter set in, 7th G started acting like he'd been possessed, screaming and hollering every day, then went stupid for a while. It took half a month before he returned to normal. He's been a bit different ever since, but he's still the same person and hasn't forgotten anything. If anything, he's more reliable than before. I guess you can call it a good thing. Ding Songyin's eyebrow gave a faint twitch. He smiled in agreement. That does sound like a good thing. He gave a sigh. These past 2 years, my employer has been the one coming. Sometimes it's the young mistress. Heh, his eldest daughter, a rare beauty of the highest order, elegant and bright, the kind who could hold her own against the famous beauties on the peerless beauties of the Jianghu. Grammy, have you ever seen her? Am I exaggerating? The old woman shook her head. Haven't seen her. Young man, you're not letting love cloud your eyes, are you? She handed the paper bag full of baozi over to Ding Songyin as she spoke. 66 copper coins. I'm running a small business, so no discounts. Ding Songyin counted out several copper coins, including some 5 valued pieces from his pouch, and laid them slowly across the stall's long counter, saying casually, What about my employer himself? In his youth, he was a handsome young man known throughout the area. He's aged a bit now, but hasn't changed much in looks. Ding Songyin referenced the 9 hells ranking and described the appearance of the demon sovereign, Tan Guanchen. This was trickier than asking about Jai Hanni. After all, beauty was the most distinctive feature anyone could have. The old woman collected the coins and smiled. If you ask me, you're a fine-looking young man yourself. Oh, you've never seen him. Ding Songyin took the paper bag and headed back along the rammed earth path towards 7th G's home, pausing here and there to exchange a few words with people along the way. He had already used Candlestar pupils on 7th G earlier, confirming the man was not one of the two-faced and bore no other illusions on his person. Between a martial artist and a man in his prime, 20 baozi left them about 80% full. 7th G wiped the grease from his lips, picked up a hoe, and led Ding Songyin out of the village and into the woodland. They took a winding route, and about a stick of incense later arrived at a secluded part of Immortal Grotto Mountain. They then climbed further along a slippery path still wet from the freezing rain until they finally reached a hollow rarely visited by anyone. A pond had been dug up in the hollow. Alongside it was a wide stretch of cultivated fields, now lying barren and quiet, the feeling of deep winter written plainly across it all. 7th G pointed to the 2 mud huts across the pond. Old Jiang is buried behind the huts. Do you want to dig him up and have a look? Yes. Ding Songyin pointed at the huts. Let me see if there's a hoe inside. We can work together and finish faster. As he spoke, his gaze swept over the fields and then the pond. The place looked like it was regularly tended, nothing like somewhere whose owner had been dead for over a year. 7th G gave an involuntary cough. Good farmland like this shouldn't be left to go to waste. Fair enough. Ding Songyin nodded earnestly. He circled around the pond, turned his back to 7th G, and pushed open the door of the mud hut. Behind him, 7th G's eyes suddenly changed, taking on a look both confused and murderous. 7th G quietly raised the hoe, eyes fixed on the back of Ding Songyan's head. In the surrounding space, blazing white flames edged with red ignited without a sound. They were restrained, their scorching heat held inward, yet they radiated the terrible sense of something that could incinerate mountains and boil seas. Within the silently churning white flames, a vast spectral shape materialized. It resembled a crow with its beak white, the rest of it indistinct. The spectral shape overlapped with 7th G in an instant. The two seemed ill-fitted together, and cold sweat broke out densely across 7th G's forehead. He clenched his jaw and swung the hoe with full force. The blazing white-hand red flames surged onto the hoe in an instant, transforming it into a fire dragon. The fire dragon, bearing a hellfire inferno, came crashing down toward the back of Ding Songyan's head. At that very moment, the Ding Songyan in 7th G's eyes abruptly vanished, as if the man had never been standing in front of the hut at all, and what he'd seen was only a phantom projected through a spatial displacement. Bang! 7th G's hoe smashed into the mud hut's door, shattering it into pieces, each fragment then incinerated to ash by the blazing near-red flames. The hellfire inferno that had surged out with the fire dragon was reined in time, and the whole mud hut was spared from going up in flames. "So you're old Jiang." Ding Songyan's voice reached 7th G from the side. He was no reckless fool. Fully trusting 7th G had never been an option. The excuse to buy food had been his chance to gather information about the man. From what the Baozi stall owner and the people he'd chatted with along the way had told him, he had learned that 7th G, too, had gone into a frenzy, and then a stupor at the same time Ding Songyan was wandering in his daze, recovering only after some time had passed. That had forced Ding Songyan to draw certain connections. 7th G spun sharply around, gripping the hoe with both hands. Still wreathed in blazing white-hand-red flames, he gasped out, "I don't know. I want to know who I am too." His eyes grew more and more lost. Since the matter might involve body-seizing rebirth, Ding Songyan was uncertain whether spirit channeling would yield useful results. Rather than rushing to act, he said pleasantly, "Fighting won't solve anything. Why don't we sit down and talk?" From the void anomalies around 7th G, Ding Songyan judged that his opponent had Dharma realm power, yet 7th G seemed to be under some constraint, his martial ability separated from the rest of him by a sense of disconnect. "No." 7th G fixed his eyes on Ding Songyan and panted like a cornered animal. "When did you figure out something was wrong with me?" Ding Songyan had already drawn Frostshade. He smiled pleasantly. "You said you overheard old Jiang planning to swap into a young body. Body-seizing rebirth requires tremendous power. What makes an ordinary farmer think he could eavesdrop on someone like that without being detected or dealt with? All I remember is that it happened. I don't know whether I'm old Jiang or someone else." 7th G stared at Ding Songyan's face, his smile growing twisted and sinister. "All I know is that if I kill you, I'll be whole again. I'll get back everything I've lost." Ding Songyan chuckled. "Who told you that? As someone with soul departure sickness, how would you know how to make yourself whole?" 7th G's expression turned abruptly solemn. "My own soul told me." Before the words had finished leaving his mouth, he took a step forward and drove the hoe, carrying a sea of fire, crashing toward Ding Songyan.